Chapter 1052. The wind on the mountain was very strong, causing their clothes to flutter noisily. Mu Yu sat on the mountain peak and looked at the city in the distance, lost in thought. Shang Guanlin had left, but he received bad news. Xiao Shui snorted and said, "That guy really knows how to cause trouble for us." Mu Yu didn't say anything. He knew that this matter wasn't that simple. Tian Ran patted Xiao Shui's head and asked Mu Yu, "What's our plan?" Mu Yu stood up and looked at the white clouds in the sky. She was elegant and relaxed. Then, she calmly said, "Kill?" There was a small gambling city in the north of Pill City. It was a paradise for gamblers. Most of the Supreme Immortals on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard had appeared on the gambling table in the gambling city. The Shadow Killer of the Silhouette Being was also a common bet on the gambling table. Here, life was the biggest bet. Anyone could bet on it. After gambling a lot of money, it often meant that the Supreme Immortal on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard would be replaced. The City Lord of the Gambling City was a genius gambling god who was proficient in all kinds of gambling techniques, Du Being. Not only was he good at gambling, but he was also good at running a gambling house. The rule of the gambling city was that there were no rules. Here, only gambling was accepted. No matter how high or low one's cultivation was, rich or poor, one would be a gambler in the gambling city. There were only transactions of money and the thrill of gambling. Even the powerful members of the Eight Gates didn't dare to act recklessly in the gambling city. This was because this was the territory of the evil sections. Causing trouble in the evil sect's territory was the last thing a cultivator wanted to do. But today was different. The sky was clear and blue, and the clouds were white. In the City Lord's mansion, the locust tree in the courtyard was full of vitality and swayed slightly. Two people were sitting on a stone chair. Du Being furrowed his brows, as if something was bothering him. Sitting opposite him was the pale-faced Zhuang Yuan. Zhuang Yuan clenched his fists, looking very irritated. "Did he walk here?" Du Being asked. "Yes, he will be here soon." Zhuang Yuan nodded. The two fell into silence and didn't speak for a long time, as if they were thinking about something. The atmosphere was somewhat stifling. The wind rustled the treetops, and a few black crows let out a few sharp cries. The evil die in Du Being's hand flickered with a demonic red light as it revolved around his fingertips. A trace of ruthlessness appeared on his face. "Is the incident at Luyin Garden related to him?" Du Being asked. Lu Yinyuan was ambushed by the Sanchong Palace, and only the top scholar survived. Zhuang Yuanlang shook his head. "It has nothing to do with him, but what happens next is related to him." Speaking of this, Du Being and the scholars' hearts seemed to sink slightly. That was a person who made them feel extremely fearful. "Where is Shimen Wucheng?" Du Being asked in a deep voice. "No, I can't find him," Zhuang Yuanlang said. "Then Wanwan." Du Being clenched his fists and hesitated. Plop! On the locust tree in the courtyard, two crows suddenly flapped their wings and flew into the sky, leaving behind a chilling caw. A few black feathers slowly floated down from the sky, landing on the table in front of Du Being. Those feathers flickered with a demonic light and disappeared in an instant. Zhuang Yuanlang and Du Being looked at each other and stood up, their eyes filled with coldness. "They're here. Welcoming guests?" the scholar said. Du Being flicked his sleeve and walked outside. "Those who come are guests. Our gambling city has never had a reason to not welcome guests." The evil die turned into a red light and disappeared from his fingertips. In the middle of the gambling city was an open-air casino. The gambling here was simple and straightforward. Life and death gambling. It was a spacious square arena that was 800 meters long. It was paved with the most expensive mysterious crystal slabs in the cultivation world. Even a body fusion expert wouldn't be able to leave a mark on the slabs. Next to the arena was a row of iron fences that flickered with light. There were also traces of dried blood, which was a ghastly sight. The life and death arena was the place where cultivators settled their grudges. The gambling city's arena was very famous. Many gamblers would go crazy here, making their blood boil. Du Biying was very smart. He attracted many people with grudges in the cultivation world here. As long as they settled the matter of life and death here, the person who survived would get a reward of 10 million spirit stones. The minimum cultivation level requirement was the spirit severing stage. 10 million spirit stones was a number that was enough to make people crazy. As long as the enemy came here to fight to the death, someone would get 10 million spirit stones in every life and death battle. Du Biying never lost money. Every day there would be a steady stream of gamblers pouring into the gambling city. In every life and death arena, there would be thousands of gamblers betting. Everyone could bet in a variety of ways, whether it was an instant kill, 3 moves, 10 breaths, or a counterattack. The gambling city would take a cut from all the gambling method. Even if each method only took a cut, the profit of a life and death arena was far more than 10 million spirit stones. The gambling city was extremely lively. Every gamble meant that someone would die. Blood easily aroused the senses of many people who pursued excitement. The gamblers here were very crazy. They liked to gamble with blood. Every time a person fell, the cheers would shake the sky and make the whole gambling city shake. Death was very cheap in the life and death arena, as if it was a tool for fun. However, death was very precious in the life and death arena because death represented countless money. However, at a certain moment, the atmosphere in the gambling city seemed to freeze. It was as if something was strangling everyone's throat. No matter how rampant the gamblers were, they did not dare to make a noise. Only the sound of steady footsteps could be heard on the street. Here came 2 talented people. They walked on the street and walked step by step towards the life and death arena. They walked very slowly, but every step seemed to step on the hearts of the gamblers, making them miss a beat. It was an arrogant and indifferent youth. He was dressed very plainly, and there was no fluctuation of cultivation on his body. He was like a low-level chi refining stage cultivator. He carried a heavy broadsword on his back. The broadsword was rusty and full of cracks, as if it would break into a pile of scrap metal with a touch. However, no one dared to look down on this ordinary broadsword. Even more so, no one dared to look down on the hidden youth. He was very famous now, and his origin was also very extraordinary. Like Jian Ying and Chen Feng's disciples, he was a genius from the Moyun mountain range. His name was Gu Yitian, the real dark horse on the supreme immortal ranking. The other youth was dressed in Sword Cleansing Valley's uniform. His face was gloomy, but his aura was like the sun at noon. He did not restrain it at all and attacked everyone like a storm. It was as if he was deliberately trying to intimidate everyone present, making the thrill-seeking gamblers feel a deep sense of fear. Heavenly Spine Sword, a genius from Sword Cleansing Valley, ranked 23rd in the Supreme Immortal ranking. Gu Yitian and Heavenly Spine Sword walked on the street and slowly walked towards the open-air gambling house. The gamblers along the way looked at them in horror. They entered the open-air gambling house, which was already filled with thousands of gamblers, as if they were all waiting for them. This gambling house was unprecedentedly grand. Du Biying frowned as he looked at the 2 people in the distance. Although his cultivation had reached the body fusion stage, he still felt a chill. They were people he could not afford to offend. However, people from the evil sects were never afraid of death. Even if someone held a knife to their neck, they would not be afraid. The 2 people had already walked over slowly. A fallen leaf was blown from the alley. It rolled across the smooth street and landed lightly at Gu Yitian's feet. The leaf trembled slightly and for some reason, it shattered into powder. "Are you here to solve the problem of life and death?" Du Biying looked at the 2 people coldly. He was not as smooth as he used to be when he welcomed guests from all over the place. He only had a kind of solemnity. Heavenly Spine Sword looked at Du Biying indifferently and said, "Yes. The problem of your life and death?" Du Biying asked again. Heavenly Spine Sword sneered, and the evil sex Jade Maiden. Their goal was very simple. Heavenly Spine Sword had never put due being in his eyes. A tribulation-passing expert was already standing at the peak of the cultivation world. Due being's expression did not change at all. He asked calmly, 2 against 1? I won't participate in the battle. Heavenly Spine Sword's gaze fell on Guitian. Heavenly Spine Sword's task was not to participate in the battle, but to supervise the battle. With Boyong Doran's life, Heavenly Spine Sword did not need to do anything. Someone would take care of all the problems for him. Guitian did not say anything. He just walked indifferently towards the arena. There was already a charming woman standing there. She was the evil sex Jade Maiden, Wan Wan, who was famous in the cultivation world for toying with middle-aged men. Her figure could be said to be a perfect goddess in the eyes of men. Her curves were beautiful, and her black hair fluttered in the wind. If they could touch such a graceful body, it would be worth it even if they died. A green gauze covered her body. The green gauze casually poured down, but it just happened to cover the parts that should be covered. It was revealing but not revealing. The wind brushed against her gauze, as if it was about to blow the gauze away. In the next moment, her peerless body would be revealed. However, the gauze just hung on her body and did not fall off. This made many gamblers itch unbearably. Guitian walked up the stage. His footsteps were very steady, and every step he took was very real. I only have one question. Wan Wan smiled. That smile was captivating and captivating, seducing the souls of countless gamblers. Guitian did not speak. He rarely spoke, especially when he was doing something that he did not like to do. Other than his master, Guitian only cared about his sword and opponents worthy of drawing his sword. In his eyes, Wan Wan was. Last words? Heavenly Spine Sword did not enter the arena. He looked coldly at Wan Wan and answered the question for Guitian. Why don't you come up together? Wan Wan asked with a smile. Heavenly Spine Sword said disdainfully, You want to fight 1 against 2? Wan Wan shook her head. I like to fight 1 against 1. If I go up, it will be 1 against 2. Heavenly Spine Sword sneered. Wan Wan revealed a devastatingly beautiful smile. The millions of gamblers in the spectator stands secretly swallowed their saliva. That smile could make them go through fire and water, climb a mountain of swords, dive into a sea of fire, do anything for her. You misunderstood me. Wan Wan's gauze fluttered in the wind. She was still smiling. If you come up, it will be 1 against 1. Heavenly Spine Sword frowned. The bracelet on Wan Wan's wrist jingled. It was crisp and pleasant. Because killing you is just a matter of convenience. It will not affect my battle with him. Wan Wan said. Chapter 1053. Wan Wan's words weren't loud, but there were tens of thousands of gamblers in the open-air casino. None of them dared to make a ruckus, so they could hear everything clearly. No one would have thought that the evil sex Jade Maiden would say such words. Heavenly Spine Sword, the genius of Sword Cleansing Valley, who was ranked 23rd on the Supreme Immortal ranking. Wan Wan actually said that killing him was just a matter of convenience? Although everyone knew that Wan Wan was very powerful, she wasn't powerful enough to kill Heavenly Spine Sword. Arrogant! Heavenly Spine Sword squeezed out these 2 words from between his teeth. Threefold Palace didn't want to keep the evil sex Golden Boy and Jade Maiden. They didn't even have the thought of controlling Shiman Wuji and Wan Wan. They just wanted to kill them and give this mission to Guitian. But in Heavenly Spine Sword's eyes, Wan Wan was insignificant and he could just do it himself. But now, he was being looked down upon by Wan Wan. As a genius swordsman of Sword Cleansing Valley, how could he endure this? Guitian, you don't need to do anything today. I alone am enough. Heavenly Spine Sword said coldly. Guitian glanced at Heavenly Spine Sword and still didn't want to say anything. Heavenly Spine Sword walked onto the stage, and a sword ray appeared in his hand as he pointed it at Wan Wan. I don't like to kill women, but you must die today. Heavenly Spine Sword's sword ray was cold and austere. Violent sword energy surrounded the sword. The air around the sword seemed to have collapsed and cracks appeared in the void, unable to withstand this terrifying sword aura. The sword stabbed out. All the gamblers held their breath. That sword was too terrifying. It was clearly aimed at Wan Wan, but it seemed to be aimed at everyone present. They couldn't help but tremble in fear. This was a terrifying sword aura that was unstoppable. Heavenly Spine Sword, the genius of Sword Cleansing Valley, who was known as the Spine of the Firmament, had carved his sword aura into the hearts of all the gamblers. They couldn't forget it. Would Wan Wan's frail body be able to block such a terrifying strike? All the gamblers felt pity. If such a beautiful woman like Wan Wan were to die under Heavenly Spine Sword, it would be the biggest regret in the cultivation world. Wan Wan still had a smile on her face. Even when Heavenly Spine Sword attacked, her expression didn't change. She didn't even move her hand. The light breeze caused her muslin clothes to flutter. The green muslin wrapped around her arms suddenly grew longer and longer in the wind. It actually lightly welcomed the Heavenly Spine Sword. When the weak scarf faced the unparalleled sword energy, everyone secretly felt pity. This was not a battle at all. How could the scarf block the Heavenly Spine Sword? This was indeed not a battle of the same level. With a light ring, Wan Wan's scarf actually shattered the Heavenly Spine Sword's sword momentum under everyone's shocked gazes and swept the violent sword away. However, the scarf still lightly pierced toward the Heavenly Spine Sword's throat. The Heavenly Spine Sword widened its eyes in shock and anger. It never expected that the sword that it had gathered all of its power for was actually unable to block that light scarf. All the gamblers' mouths were wide open in shock. That light scarf was still weak in their eyes, but for some reason, everyone believed that this scarf could pierce through the Heaven's Spine Sword's throat and kill the Heaven's Spine Sword. Wan Wan, who was only ranked 32nd among the extreme immortals, was already so powerful that she could instantly kill the Heavenly Spine Sword, who was ranked 23rd among the extreme immortals. However, a hand blocked the Heavenly Spine Sword's throat and firmly grasped the scarf that was enough to take the Heavenly Spine Sword's life. It was Gu Etienne. The unstoppable Heavenly Spine Sword couldn't block the scarf, but Gu Etienne only used one hand to block the weak and terrifying scarf. Everyone was in an uproar again. They finally understood that what Wan Wan said just now was true. Wan Wan of the evil faction had only killed the Heavenly Spine Sword in passing. The real battle belonged to Wan Wan and Gu Etienne. I was hoping that you would thank me for killing him for you. Wan Wan didn't look surprised at all. She still looked at Gu Etienne with a smile. Gu Etienne didn't look at the Heavenly Spine Sword from beginning to end. If he dies, my master won't be able to live either. I understand. Wan Wan nodded. Whoosh. The scarf had already retracted and wrapped around Wan Wan's arm again. Go down, Gu Etienne said indifferently. The Heavenly Spine Sword's face was pale. Only now did he understand just how many people were stronger than him. His face was already white. Being looked down upon like this, he couldn't refute it. Only Wan Wan and Gu Etienne were left in the arena. I thought the Threefold Palace would control you. Wan Wan smiled. Her smile was enchanting and could make many men go crazy for her. However, she never thought that her smile could charm this person. Because he was Gu Etienne. They can't control me, Gu Etienne said simply. People with strong willpower can't be controlled by the Threefold Palace's shameful methods. Wan Wan nodded. Why does the Threefold Palace want me to kill the two of you? Gu Etienne asked. The other was naturally referring to Shimen Wujie. Gu Etienne came to kill Wan Wan, but he only came to kill Wan Wan. He didn't even know the reason. Because they can't control us either, Wan Wan casually replied. If they can't control you, they will destroy you. So that's how it is. Gu Etienne understood why he came here. He slowly unsheathed the sword on his back and said, "You have the right to make me unsheathe my sword." Wan Wan was very strong. Gu Etienne respected his opponent. "This is our evil faction's casino. I don't want the arena to be destroyed," Wan Wan said. "I understand," Gu Etienne calmly replied. "A tribulation passing expert could destroy heaven and earth with a single move. Everything within a radius of a few thousand meters would be reduced to nothing." However, since Wan Wan brought it up, Gu Etienne would abide by it. The sword that was riddled with scars fell into Gu Etienne's hand. It looked like it would break into pieces at any moment. However, when Gu Etienne held the sword in his hand, the sword seemed to become one with him. Gu Etienne's originally unremarkable chi condensation aura suddenly became incomparably sharp. It was as if his entire body was a sharp sword that pointed straight at the sky. No one dared to look down on that lousy sword anymore because that lousy sword had become the focus of the entire arena. Everyone's breathing stopped and their heartbeats slowed. They were afraid that if they made any abnormal sound, they would become a ghost under that lousy sword. Holding the sword, swinging the sword, unsheathing the sword. Gu Etienne's movements were very simple. His gaze was also very cold. However, these three simple movements caused the entire open-air casino to undergo an earth-shattering change. The heavens and earth seemed to change color because of that broadsword. All the aura swept over that broadsword. That sword was even more terrifying than the heavenly spine sword. If the heavenly spine sword's sword aura was a surging river, then Gu Etienne's sword was a vast sea. Its aura was majestic and terrifying. Wan Wan moved. She didn't move when dealing with the heavenly spine sword, but she had to move when fighting Gu Etienne. The weak white veil swept out again and circled around her. Her entire body was like a dancing butterfly. The veil let out a soft sound in the air. It was crisp and pleasant to the ear, but it was also filled with a soul-seeking aura. Ding! The white veil collided with the tip of the broadsword. The sharp sword aura and violent spirit energy intertwined with each other with the two of them as the center. A battle between tribulation-passing experts could destroy heaven and earth, but the entire arena was undamaged. Both of them controlled their strength and focused all their attacks on one point. They didn't deviate at all and didn't leak out at all. All the gamblers present held their breath. They were even considering whether to leave this place to avoid being implicated. However, none of them wanted to miss a battle between two peak experts. To be able to witness such a battle was worth it even if they died. Buzz! The aura of the broadsword and the veil exploded. Both of them took a step back at the same time. Kacha! Kacha! A cracking sound came from the arena beneath their feet. The crack wasn't big and was almost invisible. However, the entire arena was silent. Everyone was a cultivator and their ears were very sensitive. They had already heard the two sounds. "It seems that we've both broken the rules," Gu Etienne said indifferently. Wan Wan chuckled. Her smile seemed to make the sun dim in comparison. "You didn't use your full strength," Wan Wan said. "I don't want to kill you, but I have to kill you." Gu Etienne raised the sword in his hand again. For his master, he had to kill the other person. The air was very oppressive. A powerful aura swept through the entire open-air casino. But at this moment, it was as if an aura had torn apart the oppressive membrane here, allowing the spring breeze to blow in. "A battle with apprehensions is the most boring." An indifferent voice resounded throughout the open-air casino. No one knew what was going on, but a figure suddenly appeared on the stage. This figure appeared so suddenly that it was as if he had been standing there from the beginning. "Mu Yu!" All the gamblers exclaimed. They recognized that figure. It was Sword Shadow Chun Feng's disciple, the genius who had created amazing battle records everywhere. "Mu Yu! Little brother Mu Yu, we meet again." Wan Wan smiled sweetly and threw a flirtatious look at Mu Yu. "Wan Wan, I shouldn't be your hobby," Mu Yu said with a smile. Wan Wan had a fetish for uncles. She didn't like pretty boys. Many people knew this. You haven't revived Uncle yet? Wan Wan's eyes became very sad. She had always had feelings for Deadwood. Mu Yu shook his head indifferently. Gu Tian's sword slowly fell and turned to Mu Yu. His eyes were filled with fighting spirit. I was just about to look for you, Gu Tian said. I'm already here, Mu Yu said with a smile. Little Shuai sat on Mu Yu's shoulder and gnawed on a bunch of hawthorns. He wasn't interested in the battle here. The crunching sound of chewing spread throughout the casino. It was the strangest sound here. You know I want to kill you. Gu Tian's voice had become heavy. You can't kill me right now, Mu Yu said. At the Qiantian school in the Moyun mountain range, Gu Tian lost to Mu Yu once. Are you so sure? Your heart isn't calm enough. A person with an unstable heart has an unstable sword, Mu Yu said. Gu Tian didn't say anything, but the heavenly spine sword sneered again. Gu Tian, kill Mu Yu and Wan Wan. This is your mission. Mu Yu's eyes were very clear. He sized up the heavenly spine sword and revealed a thoughtful expression. Chapter 1054. Many people in the cultivation world knew that Gu Tian had defeated Heavenly Spine Sword. It was also that battle that made everyone understand just how deep Gu Tian had hidden his strength. Heavenly Spine Sword was like a mouse whose tail had been stepped on. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. Gu Tian, what are you still standing there for? If he doesn't die, your master will die. Heavenly Spine Sword said fiercely. He didn't like people exposing his scars. Gu Tian clenched his sword tightly. The sword that was full of cracks let out a soft hum. Mu Yu looked at Heavenly Spine Sword and smiled faintly. Heavenly Spine Sword, are you working for Threefold Palace willingly? So what if I am? The dignity of Threefold Palace is sacred and inviolable. The entire Threefold continent is led by Threefold Palace. I'm just adapting to the situation. Heavenly Spine Sword sneered. You're not controlled by the divine soul formation. It seems like killing you isn't too unjust. Mu Yu said. Heavenly Spine Sword laughed loudly. If you want to kill me, you'll have to ask Gu Tian first. Gu Tian sternly said to Mu Yu, you can't kill him. Mu Yu turned his head and said to Little Handsome, who was on his shoulder, lend me this hawthorn skewer. Then you have to remember to return me 2 skewers. Oh no, 3 skewers, 4 skewers will do. Little Handsome reluctantly handed the bamboo skewer that only had 1 hawthorn left over to Mu Yu. This hawthorn is not bad. Mu Yu sized up the hawthorn skewer that Little Handsome handed to him. The last hawthorn on the skewer still had icing on it and a bite mark from Little Handsome. Mu Yu flicked his hand and the last hawthorn on the skewer flew toward Heavenly Spine Sword. It was only a hawthorn, but it contained an extremely powerful sword chi. It was as if it contained a divine sword, fierce and domineering. Heavenly Spine Sword's pupils constricted. He was shocked to find that he couldn't block this terrifying hawthorn skewer. How was this possible? He was a genius of Sword Cleansing Valley, yet he couldn't beat Gu Tian's chopsticks, block Wan Wan's scarf, and dodge Mu Yu's hawthorn skewers. The Heavenly Spine Sword's confidence had been greatly damaged. He was also in the Tribulation Realm. How could he be so weak in front of these 3 people? He couldn't accept it. I said, you can't kill him. Gu Tian frowned and reached out to grab the hawthorn skewer. Whoosh! Gu Tian's speed was extremely fast. His hand also contained a powerful sword intent as it collided with the hawthorn skewer. The last hawthorn with teeth marks was grabbed by Gu Tian. However, a bloody hole had appeared on the Heavenly Spine Sword's forehead. Gu Tian caught the hawthorn, but he didn't catch the bamboo skewer. The hawthorn skewer pierced through the center of the Heavenly Spine Sword's forehead, extinguishing his life force. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The Heavenly Spine Sword died just like that? The Heavenly Spine Sword, who was ranked 23rd on the Supreme Celestial Leaderboard, had actually been killed by Mu Yu's bamboo stick. Boom! The heavenly spine sword's corpse fell to the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. It was as if it had smashed into everyone's hearts. Every gambler was shocked. Gu Etienne's cold expression turned into incomparable anger. I said, "You can't kill him." Mu Yu said indifferently, "In my eyes, I will definitely kill those who deserve to die. No matter what reason he has, I can't kill him." After coming out of the Moyen mountain range and experiencing so much, he understood that he couldn't be soft-hearted when dealing with enemies. If there was a reason to kill him, he had to kill him as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would only be a burden to himself. Gu Etienne was unable to restrain his anger. The hawthorn in his hand had already been crushed into powder. If he dies, my master will die too. He had made any compromises for Boyang Daoren. If it hadn't been for Boyang Daoren, who had brought him out of the academy and given him the opportunity to come into contact with cultivation, he wouldn't have been able to achieve what he had today. Boyang Daoren was his everything. He would never gamble with Boyang Daoren's life. Mu Yu said slowly, "You're wrong. Even if he dies, your master won't die. Because to the Threefold Palace, your master's life is more valuable than the heavenly spine sword." Gu Etienne was stunned. "If something happens to Boyang Daoren, will you still listen to the Threefold Palace?" Mu Yu continued. The battle between the Xian immortals on the supreme immortal ranking was getting more and more serious. The variables in the battle between the 9 Xian immortals were getting bigger and bigger. The Threefold Palace had to grab all the chips they could, and Gu Etienne was one of them. Gu Etienne's strength was enough to contend with Mu Yu and the others in the supreme immortal steel, but the heavenly spine sword wasn't. Therefore, the heavenly spine sword could die, but Boyang Daoren couldn't. Gu Etienne's expression gradually eased. He only worshipped power in his heart. He was very straightforward and didn't know how to turn around. "Ha ha ha. Mu Yu, you're really smart." A cold laugh spread through the entire open-air casino. 2 hooded men in black appeared on the stage. Tribulation passing stage. 2 more tribulation passing stage experts. All the gamblers were shocked. They felt that today's trip was worth it. To be able to witness so many tribulation passing stage experts, they would have no regrets even if they died. If a useless person dies, then so be it. But your master is clearly still useful. One of the men in black glanced at the heavenly spine sword's corpse. The heavenly spine sword's death didn't matter to them. The Threefold Palace only valued people who could truly do things for them. Gu Etienne gripped his broadsword tightly. His undulating chest gradually calmed down. "But if you don't complete your mission today, your useless master won't be able to keep his only arm. Not only his arm, I guarantee that he'll lose both his legs too. He'll truly become a limbless piece of trash." The other man in black said coldly. The veins on Gu Etienne's wrist bulged. He glared angrily at the 2 powerful men in black. The anger in his heart burned through his chest. "Mu Yu, you killed Shihongi. How dare you appear here so brazenly? I really admire your courage." The man in black laughed. His words once again reverberated throughout the entire casino. Everyone was stunned. Shihongi? Shihongi, who was ranked 8th on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard, had died at the hands of Mu Yu. This Mu Yu, has he become so powerful? Name. Mu Yu stared at the 2 men in black. These 2 men were very powerful. They were at least at the 9th level of the tribulation passing stage. Qi Xiangxing, Lu Mingyuan. The 2 shadowy figures slowly reported their names. Everyone was so shocked that they couldn't speak. Qi Xiangxing, ranked 7th on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. Lu Mingyuan, ranked 6th on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. The entire open-air casino was almost boiling with excitement. However, the pressure of a tribulation passing stage cultivator was so great that it forcibly suppressed their excitement. No one dared to say a word, let alone take a breath. Wan Wan slowly walked to Mu Yu's side. "So now it's 3 against 2. Little brother Mu Yu, I love to win with the few against the many. Mu Yu looked at the three men in front of him. Gu Yitian was very powerful. Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan weren't weak either. The three of them weren't any weaker than Mu Yu and Wan Wan. If they really fought, it would be hard to say who would win. All the gamblers in the casino held their breath. This was going to be an unprecedented battle. The 5 tribulation passing stage prodigies on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard were gathered here. Today would definitely become the focus of the cultivation world's attention. Did you come prepared? Mu Yu asked indifferently. We've always been prepared to kill you, Qi Xiangxing said coldly. Gu Yitian raised his broadsword again and pointed it at Mu Yu. I'm sorry, but I have to kill you. Also, Gu Yitian's eyes were filled with battle intent. I've always wanted to fight you again. I'll satisfy you. Mu Yu waved his hand at the iron fence of the casino in the distance. A huge piece of iron appeared in his hand. He raised his hand and the iron seemed to be made of mud in his hand. He forged an iron sword that was identical to the Shadow Clone's sword. Gu Yitian furrowed his brows. Use your heavenly sword, Gu Yitian said. This sword is enough, Mu Yu said. The Shadow Clone sword in his hand was a heavenly sword that could communicate with heaven and earth. It was extremely powerful, but Gu Yitian's broadsword was only an iron sword. Gu Yitian shook his head. I don't want to take advantage of you. The sword in my hand is my brother. No matter how ordinary it is, it's still a divine weapon. You're not familiar with the sword in your hand, so it can't unleash your full strength. We both use swords. With a sword in our hearts, all things are swords. Why should we care about what the sword in our hands is? Mu Yu said. Gu Yitian's eyes lit up. Mu Yu's understanding of the sword coincided with his. After a while, Mu Yu continued, My heavenly sword only slays evil people. Gu Yitian slowly put his broadsword back on his back. Whoosh! The iron fence in the distance also flew into Gu Yitian's hand. He instantly forged it into a broadsword. In that case, it's fair for us. Gu Yitian waved his brand new broadsword. With a sword in my heart, all things are swords. A brand new broadsword and a brand new Shadow Clone sword. The swords suddenly released a sharp cold light at the same time. Gu Yitian still only swung his sword. It was very simple and very heavy. It was so heavy that the entire void was about to collapse, as if it couldn't withstand such a terrifying sword intent. The sword light was so domineering that it seemed like it would destroy the entire casino in the next moment. No one doubted this because Gu Yitian was capable of doing this. Gu Yitian's sword only had one move. It was a move that charged forward bravely. It was a simple sword move that no one could find a flaw in. Mu Yu also stabbed out with the iron sword in his hand. His sword was only a single sword, but in everyone's eyes, it had already transformed into a myriad of illusions. Faintly, there were 9 sword shadows sweeping out, and the 9 sword moves pierced out from different angles. Those 9 sword moves were actually so powerful, and each one of them had transformed into another sword move, complementing each other perfectly without any flaw. The 9 sword moves suddenly condensed into one sword at a certain moment. The sword move was still simple, but it was mixed with a profound sword intent. 9 by 9 returned to 1, the great Tao is simple. It was also a simple sword move, but each simple sword move contained a different sword intent. Their sword intents had already exceeded the knowledge of everyone present. The sword intent formed a raging wave around the two of them. It was as if 2 sword gods were clashing, and the world was about to collapse in the next moment. However, the arena was still intact. Their sword intents still hit the same point. No one let the violent sword intent waste in unnecessary places, nor did they destroy the arena. People who could destroy all things weren't necessarily true experts. People who could protect all things were true experts, because protecting was more difficult than destroying. Their sword intents finally collided. In everyone's eyes, There were only these two insufferably arrogant young men. Chapter 1055. The duel between the two swordsmen made everyone's hearts jump to their throats. In front of this terrifying sword intent, it didn't matter who won or lost. They were all subdued by this powerful sword intent. This was a realm that the gamblers present could never reach. No one dared to guess which side was stronger. However, the other two unrelated people on the stage moved. Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan's bodies had already appeared with a sacred white light. 8 soul beads appeared around them. They were sacred and majestic, like two gods. But their target was actually Mu Yu. They wanted to take this opportunity to kill Mu Yu. Shameless! It was unknown who shouted, but all the gamblers roared angrily. This was the duel between Gui Tian and Mu Yu. They were fighting fair and square, but the winner hadn't been decided yet. But Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan from the Threefold Palace actually took this opportunity to attack Mu Yu. They wanted to take advantage of Mu Yu's distraction to interfere with this duel. Taking advantage of others' difficulties was the most despicable thing. The two people from the Threefold Palace were shining with a sacred light. They were originally the symbol of authority in the cultivation world. But at this time, in the eyes of all the gamblers, these so-called gods were actually so ugly. They didn't dare to fight fair and square. They actually wanted to take advantage of the situation. Are all of you from the Threefold Palace so shameless? Wan Wan had been paying attention to Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan's movements. Almost at the same time as the two of them moved, the veil on Wan Wan's body also moved. The veil that filled the sky wrapped around Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. Wan Wan's veil was suffused with a casual but powerful aura. Even Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan didn't dare to underestimate it. Lu Mingyuan was surrounded by the veil. His white soul power collided with Wan Wan's veil, erupting with a terrifying wave. But Qi Xiangxing had already passed through Wan Wan's veil and continued to move towards Mu Yu. Wan Wan could only block one person. We from the Threefold Palace don't need to pay attention to any principles. As long as we kill you, we can talk about anything. Qi Xiangxing laughed loudly. His laughter seemed incomparably sacred as it reverberated throughout the entire casino, causing everyone to be infuriated. The people from the Third Palace are really shameless. So we all believed in the wrong Sanchong. The gamblers roared, but Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan didn't seem to care that their identities as level 3 palaces were exposed. Because in their eyes, after today, the entire casino city would be a dead city. They wanted to kill everyone in Las Vegas. Even if the dead knew their identities and knew their dirty tricks, they would not be able to speak, let alone spread the news. Soul Technique Luoyin, Heaven-Shaking Hammer. The 8 soul pearls around Qi Xiangxing had already formed a sparkling white sledgehammer. This sledgehammer squeezed the space and smashed down towards Mu Yu. The terrifying aura seemed to shatter the starry sky and shake heaven and earth. Immediately after, the sledgehammer turned blood-red. It was so strange. The blood-red color was the blood protection shrouding the heavens that the people of the Third Palace had used to deal with Mu Yu. Die for me. Qi Xiangxing laughed evilly. He was very confident in his soul technique. If it was 1 against 1, he might not be able to kill Mu Yu. But at this time, Mu Yu would definitely be destroyed by his sledgehammer. But Mu Yu's eyes were not flustered at all. Just like Gu Etian, their eyes flashed with cold sword intent. They only had each other. A clown's trick like the Third Palace would not affect him at all. The sword intents of the two swords converged at one point. All of the sword intents suddenly exploded from that point. The sword intents that were in a stalemate seemed to have found an outlet. The two completely different sword intents were originally opposing each other, but at this time they merged together. It was like 2 nimble dragons coiling around each other. Together they rushed towards Qi Xiangxing's sledgehammer. Boom! That despicable sledgehammer, under the attack of the 2 sword intents, was instantly shattered into thousands of pieces. It scattered in the air, seemingly unable to withstand a single blow. How is this possible? Qi Xiangxing revealed a look of disbelief. He never thought that this would happen. In his eyes, Gu Yitian and Mu Yu were in a stalemate. At this time, he had launched a sneak attack on Mu Yu. Mu Yu would undoubtedly die. But at this time, the sword intents of Mu Yu and Gu Yitian joined together to attack him. That was the sword intents of Mu Yu and Gu Yitian. Neither of their cultivations were weaker than Qi Xiangxing, let alone the two of them joining forces to attack. Whoosh! The two sword intents destroyed the sledgehammer and continued forward. They directly pierced through Qi Xiangxing's shoulder, cutting off half of his body and tearing it apart. Ah! Qi Xiangxing let out a shrill scream. Losing half of his body caused his entire body to twist and contort. He roared in shock and anger. But he was not an ordinary person. Even losing half of his body did not kill him. He quickly retreated and rushed into the crowd of gamblers. He grabbed several hundred gamblers and directly turned them into clouds of blood mist. He fused them into his body and healed his injuries. All of the gamblers in the open area screamed in horror. They never thought that such an inconceivable scene would occur. Qi Xiangxing's sinister sneak attack did not succeed. Instead, half of his body was cut off. But Qi Xiangxing used the lives of gamblers to heal himself. Triple Palace, it's a demon. It's a despicable and shameless demon. All of the gamblers roared. Their angry voices combined with a powerful life force. It pulled at the white holy soul force on Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan's body. The holy soul force was suppressed into their bodies, causing them to reveal their ugly appearances. This was a dirty creature. Its skin was dry and wrinkled, and its sharp teeth were jagged. It was completely different from the holy feeling it gave off earlier. Ugly things only dared to stay under black clothes for the rest of their lives. They could not stand the aura of life. Today, all of you will die, Qi Xiangxing roared. His ugly face looked even more ferocious and hateful. Many gamblers were frightened. They wanted to escape, but the powerful pressure of the crossing calamity stage made them unable to move. Their legs were no longer listening to them. They could not escape. Lu Mingyuan also landed beside Qi Xiangxing. He stared coldly at Gu Yitian and said, "Gu Yitian, if you dare to attack us, then your trash master will not be able to live." Gu Yitian clenched his fists and said coldly, "This is my battle with him. I will not allow anyone to interfere. If you want me to do something, then you must let me solve it in my own way." He had a straightforward personality, so he did not like the treacherous and cunning people of the Triple Palace. He did not like to play tricks. He did not want to win without fighting. Lu Mingyuan sneered, "In your own way? You think too highly of yourself. You are our puppet, so you have to do things our way. You have ruined our plans time and time again. Then there is no need to keep Boyang Doran's last arm. This is my warning to you. Tian Hoyang, cut off that trash's arm." Everyone was shocked. The famous crossing calamity stage elder of Stargate, Tian Hoyang, was also here? Swish! A bloody right arm fell out of the void and smashed in front of Gu Yitian. "No, no, no. Master, master." Gu Yitian saw the bloody old arm and was completely flustered. Boyang Doran only had one arm left. Now, even his remaining arm had been lost. Gu Yitian felt like a knife was being twisted in his heart. He took 2 steps back and the fierce momentum dissipated from his body. "Don't hurt my master. I beg you don't." Gu Yitian's eyes were red and his whole body was trembling. Lu Mingyuan sneered and said, "Then pull out your sword and kill Mu Yu. If you can't kill Mu Yu, then I will cut off your master's legs, gouge out his eyes, cut off his ears and nose. But I won't let him die. I want you to understand that your master's fate is in your hands." Tens of thousands of gamblers stared in shock at the ugly creature's words. Lu Mingyuan, ranked 6th on the extreme immortal rankings, was actually so vicious. He was so vicious that he would torture Gu Yitian's master to force Gu Yitian to do what they wanted. Gu Yitian trembled as he drew out his sword. His whole body was filled with violent anger. He looked at Mu Yu and said, "I'm sorry, I have to kill you. I can't let my master. I can't. I won't let someone I respect get hurt either." Mu Yu said slowly, "The two of us are very similar in some ways. I have always regarded you as a respectable opponent. Opponents shouldn't have any worries. I'm sorry, I have to protect my master." Gu Yitian had already raised the broken sword in his hand. The broken sword, which was riddled with scars, burst with an extremely terrifying sword will. Every crack seemed to contain sword chi. The broadsword seemed to be formed by the fusion of countless sword chis. Mu Yu continued, "So I've helped you get rid of your worries. I have to kill you. I have to." Gu Yitian's sword energy had become very chaotic. It was chaotic but powerful. The arena had cracked and the gully spread out from under his feet towards Mu Yu. However, he still didn't use his sword. He didn't like this kind of forced battle. He wanted to fight fair and square. Lu Mingyuan shouted coldly, "Gu Yitian, what are you waiting for? Do you want me to let Tian Hoyang cut off your master's legs?" Mu Yu looked at Lu Mingyuan and said indifferently, "Go ahead and try. Tian Hoyang, cut off Boyang Doran's legs." Lu Mingyuan snorted coldly. "No, wait, I'll do it. I'll do it," Gu Yitian said in a panic. He stepped on the tip of his foot and rushed towards Mu Yu like an arrow. But at this moment, an old and urgent voice sounded. "Yitian, stop. I'm fine." Gu Yitian's body suddenly stopped in the air. "Master!" Gu Yitian turned around. Two people were standing below the arena. One was Tianran, who was wearing a green dress, and the other was Boyang Doran. Tianran was supporting Boyang Doran. Boyang Doran's right arm was still intact. "Master, you're fine?" Gu Yitian was stunned. How could this be? Lu Mingyuan's ugly expression suddenly stiffened and became incomparably ferocious. "Impossible! How could a piece of trash like you escape Tian Hoyang? What are you doing? Are you calling this person?" Tianran snorted and waved her hand. Tian Hoyang fell from the air with a bang and landed in front of Lu Mingyuan. Everyone looked at Tian Hoyang in astonishment. At this time, Tian Hoyang was already a corpse. He had been dead for a long time and was missing a right arm. The bloody right arm just now came from Tian Hoyang. The audience was in an uproar. Chapter 1056. Master! Gu Yitian rushed to Boyang Doran's side and sighed in relief when he saw that Boyang Doran was unharmed. However, his body still trembled uncontrollably, and his face was still filled with worry. He remembered that the threefold palace had planted a powerful soul technique in Boyang Doran's body. It was enough to take Boyang Doran's life with a single thought. "I'm fine. This lady saved me. She also removed the soul technique on me." Boyang Doran's face was pale, but he didn't seem to be in any danger. Thank you. Gu Yitian looked gratefully at Tianran. Tianran smiled. "No need to thank me. Mu Yu asked me to do this. He also taught me how to remove the threefold palace's soul technique. I've already handed your master over to you. You should take good care of him." Tianran appeared beside Mu Yu in a flash. "A bit slow," Mu Yu said with a faint smile. "Can't help it. It wasn't easy to kill Tian Hoyang and Tian Yuanwan, but we made it in time." Tianran stuck out her tongue. "Tianran Jie, if you had been a bit late, Mu Yu would have really fought Gu Yitian. We wouldn't have been able to delay them for long." Little Shuai jumped onto Tianran's shoulder and bit into his drumstick as if no one else was around. Little Shuai had been eating his own food since the beginning. Even when Mu Yu and Gu Yitian fought, he stood on Mu Yu's shoulder and watched the show. The so-called delay had nothing to do with him. It's good that you're here. Mu Yu shook his head. If he fought Gu Etienne, he would have had to go all out. Gu Etienne was a powerful opponent, and both sides would have been injured. If that happened, there would have been no chance of winning against the Threefold Palace. Good thing you're fine. Those two from the Threefold Palace are really strong. Speaking of which, the Shadowless clan is really well informed, Tian Ran said. Mu Yu heard about Gu Etienne from Shang Guanlin and rushed to Casino City. When he arrived at Casino City, he saw the two people from Sanchong Palace, as well as Tian Hoyang and Tian Yuan holding Boyang Daoren hostage. They were also in a corner of Casino City. Today, Gu Etienne came to kill Wan. If Gu Etienne and Wan fought, it was hard to say who would win. If they wanted to stop Gu Etienne, they had to save Boyang Daoren. However, it was impossible for Mu Yu and Tian Ran to rescue Boyang Daoren from these four people. Neither Qi Xiangxing nor Lu Mingyuan was weaker than Mu Yu, so they could only split up with Tian Ran. Mu Yu appeared to attract Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan, while Tian Ran was responsible for dealing with Tian Hoyang and Tian Yuan, who were relatively weaker. Mu Yu knew that as soon as he appeared in the arena and killed Tian Jijian, the two people from the Threefold Palace would definitely appear to deal with him. That would be the best time for Tian Ran to rescue Wan. Tian Ran was also very strong. Like Mu Yu, her strength couldn't be judged by her cultivation level. It was not a problem for her to deal with Tian Hoyang and Tian Yuan. Fairy of the Red Dust Sect, I really miscalculated. I didn't expect you to become so strong in just a few months. Lu Mingyuan looked at Tian Ran coldly. Tian Ran's appearance caused a stir again. The Fairy of the Red Dust Sect, one of the 8 sects, had been uprooted and no longer existed. However, Tian Ran appeared here, which was surprising. Although Tian Ran was a few years younger than Wan, her appearance and talent were not inferior to the evil sect's Jade Maiden Wan. Sister Tian Ran is here, so how many of us should we fight now? Wan covered her face and chuckled. She turned to look at Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. In this battle, the number of people on both sides kept changing. Everyone was a genius who was evenly matched, so the number of people determined the advantage. Miss Tian Ran, can you help me take care of my master? I want to kill my enemy with my own hands. Gu Etienne helped Boyang Daoren over and said. Tian Ran tilted her head and thought for a moment. She looked at Mu Yu questioningly. However, Mu Yu said, Little Shuai, you go take care of him. It's not so simple here. Okay, I'll cheer for you. Little Shuai flew and landed on Boyang Daoren's shoulder. Gu Etienne glanced at Little Shuai. He didn't know the ability of this little beast, but he didn't say anything. The four of them faced Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. The gap in strength had been pulled apart. Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan didn't panic at all. Instead, he sneered, You want to save the entire gambling city with just the four of you? Mu Yu calmly said, We're not here to save people. Gu Etienne's sword burst out with killing intent, We're here to kill. The fierce aura of the four people swept out, suppressing the soul power of Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. The aura of the entire enormous open-air casino was overflowing. As long as any side made a move, the entire open-air casino would be destroyed in an instant. The atmosphere was quiet to the extreme. At this time, the gamblers also realized that something was wrong, because an earth-shattering battle was about to break out here. The consequences of 6 passing calamity stage cultivators making a move were far from as simple as just controlling their abilities to not destroy the arena. If they were careless, everyone's life would be in danger. The tens of thousands of gamblers were already panicking to the extreme, but no one dared to move. The powerful aura suppressed them to the point that they could only sit obediently on the spot. No one dared to make any unnecessary movements, afraid that if they moved, they would be consigned to eternal damnation. They could only watch all of this in a panic, watching this unprecedented gamble. Haha, it seems like we're in time. Swish. Another sacred white light fell beside Qi Xiangxing and Lu Mingyuan. The appearance of this aura made everyone's breathing stagnate again. Another passing calamity stage cultivator. At this moment, not a sound could be heard in the entire casino. The gamblers were no longer as excited as before. Everyone's vitality had gradually dissipated. The people from the Triple Palace once again emitted their divine soul power. It was so eye-catching that it made people revere them. The aura on their bodies was always so holy, holy but dirty. Wu Yuzhou, you're a bit slow, Lu Mingyuan said lightly. Wu Yuzhou ranked 5th on the Supreme Immortal list. Not only me, but another person also came. Wu Yuzhou looked at the 4 people opposite him jokingly. Buzz. A terrifying aura came from above the casino. The person just took a step in the void, but everyone raised their heads in horror. Looking at the godlike figure in the air, their hearts couldn't help trembling. Deshang Stage, the legendary master of the Deshang Stage. The stormy aura swept everyone, making the gamblers in the entire casino tremble in fear. No one expected that a master of the Deshang Stage would appear here. Mu Yu, you actually appeared here and walked right into the trap. This trip is really worth it. The person in the air was the envoy of the Threefold Palace, who chased Mu Yu in the Moyun mountain range. Mu Yu looked at the envoy of the Threefold Palace indifferently. When he had just stepped into the passing calamity stage, he was almost driven into a corner by this person. Now he was no longer the him of the past, but the envoy still gave him a huge threat. At this time, the number of people on both sides was balanced, but everyone knew that the moment the envoy appeared, the outcome of this competition was already decided. That was a master of the Deshang Stage, a mighty figure who had comprehended the domain ability. Even Mu Yu and the other 3 together could not be a match for a master of the Deshang Stage. The ugly bastard of the Threefold Palace came very quickly. Wan Wan was still smiling, as if she did not take the envoy seriously. All the gamblers thought that Wan Wan had gone crazy. This beautiful and evil woman was very strong, no one denied this point, but the envoy was a master of the Deshang Stage. No matter how strong Wan Wan was, how could she dare to challenge a master of the Deshang Stage? The envoy looked at the ants in the arena condescendingly. In his eyes, these people were not worth mentioning at all. Even if they were the so-called proud sons of heaven, in the face of absolute strength, they were nothing. As long as he wanted, the open-air casino would be turned into ashes and the entire casino would be razed to the ground in an instant. But his eyes fell on Mu Yu. When he was in the Moyun mountain range, he used all kinds of means, but he did not kill this young man. Instead, he was killed by him. This kind of humiliation was unforgettable. Mu Yu, I admire your courage, the envoy coldly said. At this time, I thought you would hide in your rat hole and tremble. I didn't think you would actually dare to come out and court death. Mu Yu indifferently looked at the envoy. The moment he appeared to help Guitian, he knew that today's matter would not end well. But he did not shrink back, because nothing could happen to Guitian. The battle of the Xian Immortals could not be without him. I thought you maggots did not dare to show your faces. Why did you suddenly think of coming out? Mu Yu responded with equal harshness. The shadow sword was already trembling in his hand. The immortal dew sword and the shadow sword touched each other, and the power of the 2 heavenly swords continued to rise. The envoy seemed to have also noticed this. The shadow sword Qin Feng's 9 heavenly swords still made him afraid. He knew how powerful the heavenly swords would be when they connected to the sky. Even if he thought that with the cultivation of Mu Yu and Tianran, the dual sword combination would not be a threat to him, he still made a foolproof plan. You think you can escape from this city today? You are wrong. I will not give you any chance. The envoy suddenly waved his hand, and a powerful and sacred soul power burst out from his hand. His gaze became incomparably cold. Any chance to use the heavenly swords? Shua. Just like in Chun An City, the walls of the gambling city began to spread with an indestructible white soul power barrier. This barrier was enough to cut off the connection between the heavenly swords and the sky. Mu Yu, I didn't think that you would not learn from your mistakes and still dare to come to a place like this city. Your strongest reliance is the two heavenly swords. The heavenly swords are unable to connect to the sky, so just obediently accept your deaths. The envoy coldly laughed. Even if it was a cold laugh, it still sounded righteous in everyone's ears. It was as if he was carrying out a righteous judgment, sacred yet filthy. After fighting with Mu Yu many times, the people of the third layer palace all understood the heavenly swords in Mu Yu's hands. The heavenly swords were very powerful. In an open space, no one could stop them from connecting to the sky, and the power they could display would increase exponentially. However, in a city, it was enough to use a soul technique barrier to cut off the connection between the heavenly swords and the sky, causing the heavenly swords' power to be greatly reduced. Chapter 1057. The gambling city was very quiet, so quiet that one could hear their own breathing. For all the gamblers, this was an unparalleled gamble that could not be missed. It was brilliant beyond compare. But watching this gamble, the stakes were their own lives. On the stage, 7 figures of crossing calamity stage confronted each other, and there was also a mountain-like figure of great ascension stage suppressing everyone in the air. Mu Yu did not respond to the palace envoy, but looked at Wan Wan and said, "Are you confident?" Wan Wan smiled lightly. "That depends on the situation." A gust of wind blew in the air from an unknown place, and the wind was mixed with the sound of a flute, intoxicating the soul. Flower petals fell from the sky onto the stage, and the familiar scene made all the gamblers startled. Everyone already understood who had appeared this time. The golden boy of the evil sex, the notorious Shimin Wuji. That handsome figure fell from the sky and played the flute. The sound of the flute was long and sad, and then dissipated among the flower petals. "I thought Wan Wan would be able to deal with it by yourself, it's really disappointing." Shimin Wuji lazily put away the flute in his hand, leisurely walked to Wan Wan's side, and hugged Wan Wan's slender waist without any scruples. "Your waist is really getting thinner and thinner." Shimin Wuji laughed unscrupulously. Everyone swallowed a mouthful of saliva in their hearts. Other than Shimin Wuji, there was no other person who dared to touch Wan Wan so unscrupulously. "My waist is thin, but it's not for you to touch." Wan Wan lightly waved her hand, and Shimin Wuji's hand was swept away from her waist. Shimin Wuji shrugged his shoulders, somewhat disappointed, and looked at Mu Yu. "Aya, little brother Mu Yu and little sister Tian Ran are so close, and they are also fellow disciples. Wan Wan, why don't you learn from them? Fellow disciples should love each other." Tian Ran glared at Shimin Wuji. She naturally knew about Shimin Wuji. "I was just thinking about when you would appear." Mu Yu laughed. The southern 50-mile garden was attacked by the Sanchong Palace, and as a member of the evil sex, it was impossible for Shimin Wuji not to know. Today, someone came to Gambling City to cause trouble, so how could Shimin Wuji just sit by and watch? "That's right. I'm here today to collect a debt." Shimin Wuji lazily combed his long hair, and his gaze suddenly became incomparably deep. When the people from Threefold Palace saw Shimin Shaochu appear, they still did not put Shimin Shaochu in their eyes. Shimin Wuji was very strong, but he was still not at the great vehicle stage. The palace emissary smiled contemptuously. "Unlucky Shimin, I was still thinking of looking for you, but you delivered yourself to my door." Shimin Wuji indifferently asked, "The 50-mile garden in the south was created by your Threefold Palace?" The palace emissary sneered. "I thought I could kill the two of you in the 50-mile garden in the south. I didn't expect the two of you to slip through the net. Now that I've caught both of you, it can be considered a complete victory." "Catch them together? You?" Shimin Wuxing opened his evil underworld fan with a walla sound. This legendary evil fan, Shimin Wuxing rarely used it in front of everyone. The smile on the palace envoy's face became more and more arrogant. What? Do you think there's any chance of escaping this time? You're stupid because you stepped into our spirit technique enchantment. Ha ha ha. The entire huge gambling city was already shrouded in a spirit technique enchantment. A sacred white light enveloped the entire city, making it look very magnificent. This spirit technique enchantment was extremely powerful, and it was personally activated by the palace envoy's spirit technique. Without surpassing his cultivation, it was impossible to break it. But Shimin Wuji slightly shook his head. You're too naive. I thought that as a great vehicle stage expert, your brain would be a bit smarter. Isn't it? Mu Yu, I actually admire your masterpiece. Mu Yu calmly looked at the palace envoy. The people of Threefold Palace like to treat people as fools. No wonder such arrogant people have no way to convince the masses. You group of maggots can only put on airs and do some shameful little trick. The palace envoy's smile slowly disappeared, revealing a gloomy look. Death is at hand, and you still dare to flaunt your mouth. Mu Yu slowly stepped out, and his eyes suddenly became sharp. The entire city, with Mu Yu's feet as the center, suddenly emitted an evil red light. It was as if he was stepping on empty space, causing red ripples to appear. Shwa! Dense array patterns spread out from under Mu Yu's feet like a spider web, covering the entire open-air casino, and then the entire city. They climbed up the city walls and climbed up to the spirit technique enchantment. Those were red demonic array patterns, and these array patterns were endowed with all kinds of evil auras. It was as if the entire gambling city had been demonized by this aura. Everything actually opened their demonic red eyes, whether it was a piece of floor, a sword, a flag, or a gambling table. The entire city had been demonized. The palace envoy's face froze, and he looked at everything in shock. How is this possible? Siebulo's evil spirit? Impossible. Siebulo is already impossible. Absolutely impossible. The demonized aura was very similar to Siebulo's powerful aura. The originally holy white spirit technique enchantment in the air was gradually eroded by the demonic red array patterns, and turned into a red light. In the sky above the gambling city, a pair of huge red demonic eyes appeared. The eyes were a few hundred meters long, and they were cold and austere. They were filled with a biting cold evil light, and they stared at the palace envoy. Impossible. When did this happen? The palace envoy's face finally changed. Do you really think that your tricks can be carried out again and again? Do you really think that your dirty soul power is invincible in this world? Mu Yu indifferently looked at the palace envoy. This time, I want to see who can't escape. Little brother Mu Yu, your array techniques have really made me have a whole new level of respect for you. Wan lightly laughed. The moment Mu Yu arrived at the gambling city, as the head of the formation glyph sect, he had already discovered that there was an evil array hidden in the gambling city. The array was engraved on a magic treasure in Wan's hand, and it was called the Evil Bell. This power was closely related to the demonic power that Siebulo had seen on his body. It was very obvious that Siebulo had left behind a protective power for his disciple. However, this power was far from enough to resist a great ascension stage expert, because Siebulo's power was very difficult to control, and Wan was not able to fully activate the array that contained the demonic power. However, this array in Mu Yu's hands was a different matter. Siebulo was an array master, but his disciple was not, so the array could not be fully activated. However, Jian Ing Chen Feng's disciple, Mu Yu, was the head of the formation glyph sect. If you want to play, I'll play with you until you're satisfied. Mu Yu modified this demonic array, and made it demonize the palace envoy's spirit technique enchantment. Is that so? Then I'll destroy this enchantment and let you understand the power of absolute power. The palace envoy sneered. Soul Technique Luo Yin, Wild Underworld 7 Arts. The terrifying power of the field domain exploded in an instant. The white starlight spots were suddenly covered by the blood mist. The blood mist turned into 7 white snakes that were hundreds of feet tall, lined up in a row. The huge snake heads flicked their scarlet and vicious tongues, and attacked the enchantment above the casino city from different directions. All of the gamblers looked at this incomparably terrifying domain power in shock. This power had already surpassed their imaginations, and in their opinion, it was enough to wipe out everything. It could even destroy the pair of huge demonic eyes in the sky. Buzz. However, no one expected that the pair of eyes in the sky above the gambling city would actually shoot out a red light, which firmly blocked the palace envoy's attack. The entire demonic enchantment did not move in the slightest. The palace envoy's insufferably arrogant attack was like a clown in front of this enchantment. In front of Senior Ciebulo, what are you? Mu Yu said indifferently. Although the palace envoy was powerful, his strength was at the bottom of the great ascension stage. How could he fight against someone as powerful as Ciebulo? The palace envoy and the remaining 3 people's faces were so gloomy that water could be wrung out of them. They thought that today, they had already made the preparations to turn the entire gambling city into a living hell. They had used the same trick and laid down the enchantment, preparing to catch a turtle in a jar. However, they were still too arrogant. People who were blindly arrogant were stupid. They were so stupid that they thought that others would fall for it a second time. The palace envoy had laid down the enchantment, but in the end, it became someone else's wedding dress and trapped them instead. However, the palace envoy suddenly laughed. I underestimated you. However, if you think that you can trap me like this, then you are too naive. I will let you understand that the power of a great ascension stage is not something that you can contend against with your so-called insignificant skills. In front of a great ascension stage expert, I only need to use a finger to crush you lowly ants. In the air, the powerful aura of the wild underworld's 7 extremities had already locked onto Mu Yu and the others. In the eyes of the palace envoys, no matter how many schemes a crossing calamity stage cultivator had, they would not be able to withstand a single blow from a great ascension stage cultivator. But Mu Yu looked at the palace envoy mockingly. You Spiritas have never thought of learning from your mistakes, have you? Because of your arrogance, you think that your set of skills is enough to suppress everything, and you don't need to improve yourself at all, right? You have underestimated the cultivators. Do you really think that you are invincible? Isn't that so? Ants like you are nothing before our soul race. The palace emissary said with disdain. Mu Yu faintly smiled. The array pattern in his hand suddenly swept out. This time, the array pattern that lit up in his hand was the 8 trigrams array pattern that was filled with vitality and vitality. The formation pattern spread out from everyone in the gambling city and enveloped them. The gamblers' eyes were dazed for a moment before they gradually regained their luster. I won! I'm the final winner! Ha ha ha! I've earned 10 million! Everyone in the gambling city suddenly cheered excitedly. It was as if they had seen some grand event that made them rejoice. Everyone broke free from the oppression of the palace envoy's great ascension stage aura and began to cheer and shout excitedly. Although the gambling city was small, there were still tens of thousands of gamblers. These people were all affected by Mu Yu's illusion array, causing them to have excited hallucinations. The cheering and shouting of tens of thousands of people formed a powerful and exuberant vitality that filled the entire gambling city. It was as if the entire gambling city had become a place of surging enthusiasm and excitement. The palace envoy's complexion changed again. The white sacred soul power on the 4 of them began to be forced back. Their ugly faces were once again revealed. The vitality gathered by the cheering and shouting of the people in the entire city suppressed their soul power, causing them to be unable to raise their soul power in an instant. Then, the gambling city's celebration officially begins. Chapter 1058. The reason why the threefold palace doesn't dare to show their faces in public isn't just because the exuberant life force will cause you to reveal your true form, but also because the cheers of everyone will greatly reduce your soul force. I'm very clear about this. Mu Yu and Tian Ran shook hands, and the two of them smiled at each other. Fighting side by side with the person they liked the most was a pleasant feeling, and any kind of joy was a fatal technique for the Sanchong who hid their heads and showed their tails. The illusion array used by Mu Yu caused all the gamblers to see the most exciting illusion of their lives. For gamblers, the most exciting moment was nothing more than winning millions or tens of millions of dollars. It was nothing more than winning millions of dollars. It was nothing more than winning millions of dollars. It was nothing more than earning a lot of money from their bets. There were tens of thousands of gamblers in the gambling city, and everyone was imagining the grand scene of winning their bet. Everyone began to celebrate in their own unique way, and the pressure of the palace envoy was not worth mentioning at all. The life force of all the gamblers in the city gathered into a powerful force, and the soul power began to dissipate. The palace envoy and the remaining 3 members of the soul race already had ferocious expressions, and their sacred outer clothes had been torn apart, revealing their ugly true faces. They had sharp teeth, and their skin was dry and wrinkled, just like monsters that could not be exposed to light. Even the palace envoy's great ascension stage aura had become unstable, and could no longer exert any pressure on Mu Yu and the others. He could not even display the strength of a normal Great Ascension stage expert. Life force was the soul race's greatest enemy. Kill these gamblers for me. The palace envoy's ugly and ferocious face twitched, and the bulging blue veins made him look even more terrifying. Every time they were in a crowded place, they would slaughter people, use their aura to suppress people, and forbid everyone from cheering, because the life force gathered by cheers would make them feel weak. Now, as long as they killed these gamblers who were addicted to the illusion, the restrictive force would disappear, and they would become strong again. But how could Mu Yu and the others let their wishful thinking succeed? The powerful crossing calamity stage aura completely dispersed from their bodies, and the life force formed by the 10,000 gamblers in the gambling city had no effect on them. The 5 of them formed a powerful pressure that was enough to compete with the 4 members of the soul race. Mu Yu, you two hold off that great vehicle stage cultivator first. We'll go over to help you once we've dealt with the remaining 3. Gu Etian was the first to rush out. The broadsword in his hand exuded a heavy sword qi. At this moment, he did not hold back and rushed towards the strongest Wu Yu state. Shiman Wuji and Wan Wan went to abandon Xiang Xing and Lu Mingyuan respectively. The heavenly swords in Mu Yu and Tian Ran's hands were incomparably powerful. Their heavenly sword fusion was undoubtedly the strongest at this moment. Even if they couldn't defeat the palace envoy whose soul power was restricted, they could at least delay him for a period of time. Tian Ran, you know what I'm thinking. Mu Yu faintly smiled. The cyan wind heart-linking formation had already enveloped Tian Ran's body. The two of them instantly connected their minds. Shadow Clone and Immortal Dew, the 2 heavenly swords were incomparably tyrannical. I know. I won't let go of the chance to kill my enemy. Tian Ran's pure eyes shone with a resolute light. Any Spirita's monster deserved to die. Kill. It's everyone's responsibility to eliminate the little white ghouls. Little Shuai shouted excitedly on Boyang Doran's shoulder. His voice was incomparably majestic and pierced through the clouds. Boyang Doran had already retreated to the side. He was not affected by Mu Yu's illusion array and was still looking at everything in bewilderment. There was a strange aura around Little Shuai's body that protected him. Hey, old man, hurry up and shout with me. The more you cheer, the less power the little white ghouls have, and your disciple has a higher chance of winning. Little Shuai said excitedly. Ah? Is it like this? Boyongdaoren was once the leader of a sect and was calm and proper. How could he lose his composure and shout randomly? Little Shuai was too lazy to explain anything to Boyongdaoren. He turned into a child and rode on Boyongdaoren's neck. He held two small flags in his hands and shook them excitedly. Come on! Come on! Buy me delicious food, big brother Muyu, come on! Beautiful, kind, and doting big sister Tianran, come on! Silly idiot Guitian, come on! Shameless Shiman Wuji, come on! Bad big sister Wanwan, come on! Little one, if you say that I'm devastatingly beautiful, I'll fight harder. Wanwan winked at little Shuai and dodged Xiang Xing's soul spell. Okay. Femme fatale big sister Wanwan, come on! Little Shuai corrected himself. Wanwan laughed. That's acceptable. Boyongdaoren finally understood what little Shuai meant when he came to his side to cheer him on. At first, he thought it was just a joke, but in the end, a visible vitality emerged from little Shuai's body and gathered toward the Soul Clan members. Little Shuai was 100 times more excited than those gamblers. It was 1 against 100. Etienne, be careful, you can do it. Boyongdaoren was infected by little Shuai and finally shouted this sentence. Gu Etienne's eyes became incomparably firm. Boyongdaoren's words were like a cardiac stimulant, causing the broadsword in his hand to become even stronger. I will, master. Wu Yuzhou was very powerful, but he encountered the equally powerful Gu Etienne. Gu Etienne relied on his powerful physical body and sword qi. Gu Etienne's sword force was simple and sharp, causing Wu Yuzhou to feel great pressure. At this time, his soul power couldn't fully display its power and was entangled by Gu Etienne's sword force. He couldn't kill those cheering gamblers at all. In just one exchange, he was repelled by Gu Etienne's sword force. Wanwan's target was the heavily injured Qi Xiangxing. Qi Xiangxing was injured by Gu Etienne and Mu Yu's sword qi, and now his soul power was suppressed by the powerful vitality of the gambling city. Facing the evil sex jade girl Wanwan, he had no power to resist. Shiman Wuji was the most outstanding person in the Xiuzhen world, but his cultivation was not inferior to anyone. He waved his evil nether fan, and a strange white light changed into a whirlwind and surrounded Lu Mingyuan, making Lu Mingyuan unable to display his strength. Mu Yu and Tianran's heavenly swords pointed to the blue dome of heaven. Their monstrous aura was magnificent and powerful. The palace envoy's soul power was severely restricted, so his domain power couldn't create a strong pressure on them. Facing the heavenly swords, his malevolent face became even more resentful. Without the support of his soul power, his domain was no longer a threat to Mu Yu. The two heavenly swords were insufferably brilliant, just like divine pillars that supported the sky. Overbearing sword qi swept across the sky. The sword qi descended from the two demonic eyes in the sky, fused with the fury of the blue dome of heaven, and bombarded the palace envoy's body. The palace envoy roared. His soul power transformed into 7 powerful giant snakes, and bombarded the sword qi in the sky. However, the sword qi of the two heavenly swords overflowed the sky, and actually fused with the vitality of the entire city, and sent his 7 giant snakes flying. The giant snakes summoned by his 7 arts of the wild underworld were everywhere, but at this time, they were suppressed by the two heavenly swords. His heart was incomparably sullen, and he quickly flew into the sky. He had to leave the gambling city and go to a spacious place to not be affected by those desperate gamblers. Only when he was outside would he be able to unreservedly display his great Ascension Realm domain. At that time, it would be enough to deal with Mu Yu and the others. There was originally a soul power barrier in the sky, but at this time, it was already swallowed by the demonic array. When the palace envoy just arrived in the sky, the two demonic eyes already emitted a tyrannical red light and rushed towards the palace envoy. Chapter 1059. Bastard. The palace emissary flew up to the sky in anger. A dignified great vehicle stage cultivator was actually forced to this extent by two crossing calamity stage cultivators. The shame in his heart could be imagined. He roared in his heart and swore to kill Muyu. On the other side, Gu Etienne's broadsword had already swept out. The overbearing and heavy sword Qi was like a mountain, fiercely slamming on Wu Yuzhou's body. The white soul bead that appeared on Wu Yuzhou's body was instantly smashed into pieces. I will kill all those who threaten my loved ones. An indomitable killing intent appeared in Gu Etienne's eyes. It was bone-chilling. He only respected one person in his life. Even if he had to pay the price with his life, he would protect that person. Anyone who dared to hurt that person would have to pay the price. Wu Yuzhou let out a muffled groan. He couldn't dodge in time and was directly swept by the heavy sword Qi. Like a broken sandbag, he smashed into the arena, creating an incomparably huge pit. Shimen Wuji's figure floated in the air. The petals floating in the air were like sharp weapons in the storm formed by the evil nether fan. Do you want to hear my story? Shimen Wuji's evil nether fan spun in the air. A flute appeared in his hand as he looked at Lu Mingyuan with a faint smile. Very few people in the cultivation world didn't know about his bizarre life experience. No one knew whether Shimen Wuji was as miserable as he said, but many people knew that hearing about Shimen Wuji's tragic life experience was definitely not a good thing. Lu Mingyuan was continuously defeated by Shimen Wuji's evil nether fan, and his white soul bead became dim. He was furious. Shimen Wuji's strength was far beyond his imagination. Even though he was now a powerhouse ranked 6th on the Supreme Immortal list, he always understood that it would be very difficult for him to defeat Shimen Wuji even in his heyday, let alone now when he was in an absolute disadvantage. Lu Mingyuan roared, "Soul Technique Luoyin, it seems that you don't want to hear my story. What a pity! Since you're a disobedient child, there's no need for you to speak." Shimen Wuji's finger gently brushed across the flute, and the entire flute suddenly trembled. Unexpectedly, it automatically played a clear and melancholic flute melody. It was long and sorrowful, but it contained a powerful killing intent. The flute melody formed a terrifying sound wave that rolled up the evil nether fan, swept out and bombarded Lu Mingyuan's chest, causing it to cave in. Bang! Lu Mingyuan also smashed heavily into the arena, smashing Wu Yuzhou, who had just stood up, back into the depths of the ground. Countless scarves appeared all over Wan's body. Those fragile scarves fluttered in the air as if they would break into rags at the slightest touch. However, every time a scarf wrapped around Qi Xiangxing's body, deep scratches would appear all over his body, so deep that his bones could be seen. Qi Xiangxing's soul bead had already been shattered by Wan, and his filthy body was already riddled with scars. Wan was even more merciless. She directly removed Qi Xiangxing's other hand. The scarves that filled the sky tightly wrapped around Qi Xiangxing's body, causing Qi Xiangxing to be unable to breathe. The snow-white scarves had already sunk into Qi Xiangxing's skin. I've never had a chance to display my true abilities. Wan smiled sweetly. The scarves that filled the sky hung on her body, causing her to be as dazzling as a goddess from the 9th heaven. A strange, evil force emerged from the scarves, and in the end they were fiercely pulled. Crash! Qi Xiangxing, who was already heavily injured, was directly torn to pieces by Wan's scarves like a tattered doll. He didn't even have the chance to make a sound before he died. Extreme Immortal Rank 7th, Qi Xiangxing, dead. Lord Palace Envoy, what do we do now? If we can't get out of this barrier, it will be very difficult for us to gain any benefit. Lu Mingyuan crawled up from the ground and said in shock and anger. At this time, half of Lu Mingyuan's body had been completely cut off by Shimen Wuji. He was in an extremely miserable state. Although there was no blood flowing from the wound, there was a charred appearance. There was even a hole in his chest that looked like a fan. Shimin Wuji didn't show any mercy and directly used the fan to blast a large hole in Lu Mingyuan's chest. It was a shocking sight. One of Wu Yuzhou's arms was also cut off by Guitian. The wound was neat and tidy, and it still carried a sharp sword energy. That sword energy was very domineering and had already invaded his body. He clenched his sharp teeth, but there was nothing he could do. Guitian and the others landed beside Mu Yu and Tianran. They had the advantage of terrain and manpower, and they had even killed one of the enemies with their own hands. Still not dead. The broadsword in Guitian's hand swept out horizontally, and a deep crack suddenly appeared on the ground. The crack continued to expand and spread to the place where the three of them were standing. The domineering sword energy swept out from the ground. The four of them roared and retreated again. I'm here to collect the debt. I will never let them leave here alive. Shimin Wuji still lazily combed his hair, seemingly casual, but his eyes revealed killing intent. Wan Wan and Shimin Wuji had already rushed over again. Mu Yu and Tianran looked at each other. They didn't dare to use a large-scale sword intent. If they used their full strength, the sword intent would inevitably be more powerful, but all the gamblers in the gambling city would also be affected. Once the people in the gambling city woke up from the illusion, the barrier would also lose its effect. We are only responsible for stalling this great Ascension Realm person and preventing him from slaughtering the people in the city. Mu Yu said. I know. Tianran nodded. The two of them floated up again, and the two heavenly swords in their hands once again emitted intense light as they headed toward the palace envoy. Although the palace emissary's domain power could no longer affect them, it was still impossible to kill the palace emissary. They could only wait for Guitian and the other two to kill the others before joining forces to deal with the strongest palace emissary. Bastard! Who would have thought that no matter how much I calculated, I would still be played by Mu Yu? The palace emissary saw the two powerful sword intents coming towards him again, and the three people he brought were already heavily injured. If this continued, it was only a matter of time before the three from Wu Yu State were killed. Damn it! Mu Yu, I will definitely kill you! The palace envoy angrily roared. His surrounding domain instantly covered Wu Yuzhou and Lu Mingyuan. At the same time, the seven snakes of the wild Nether Seven Absolutes appeared once more. But this time, the seven snakes didn't pounce towards Mu Yu, but towards Wu Yuzhou and Lu Mingyuan. Lord Palace Envoy, don't! Wu Yuzhou and Lu Mingyuan saw the seven snakes biting towards them, and their complexion greatly changed. They never thought that the palace envoy would actually attack them in order to escape. Qi Xiangxing is already dead, the two of you can't beat them. Now, only by using the two of you as a sacrifice can I have enough soul power to break this barrier. You can rest assured. I will avenge you. The palace envoy coldly said. Pung, pung, pung. Chapter 1060. Perhaps even the two from Wu Yuzhou didn't expect that instead of dying in the hands of Guitian, they would die in the hands of the palace envoy. The palace envoy's seven giant snakes turned his two crossing calamity stage subordinates into soul power essence and swallowed them all. Then his whole body lit up with white soul power, and the soul power forcibly suppressed the vitality. After the soul power essence of the two crossing calamity stage soul race people was absorbed by the palace envoy, his domain ability suddenly became extremely powerful, faintly surpassing the power of Mu Yu and Tianran's two heavenly swords. The palace envoy shouted wildly, and his whole body rose from the ground, and once again rushed towards the barrier in the sky. The power of the domain instantly covered the barrier, and with a crash, the entire scarlet barrier collapsed into pieces, as if the blood-red sky was broken. The palace envoy had already rushed out of the gambling city, getting rid of the influence of the vitality formed by tens of thousands of people in the gambling city. This time, I want to raze the whole city to the ground. The palace envoy didn't say until he retreated to the sky. Mu Yu and others looked at each other, and their eyes were incomparably dignified. The palace envoy had swallowed 2 crossing calamity stage soul race people and had become even stronger than before. Now that the barrier of the gambling city had been broken, the palace envoy had left the gambling city. The vitality of everyone gathered together could no longer be used by the array, and could no longer have an impact on the palace envoy. The situation was not good. Soul Technique Luoyin, Wild 7 Arts. The palace envoy's murderous voice came from the sky, and the 7 giant snakes had been mixed with a violent momentum towards the entire gambling city. With his current soul power, a long-range attack was enough to destroy the gambling city. Stop him. Otherwise, after the people of the gambling city die, this guy will become even stronger. Mu Yu shouted, and he had already rushed out to meet the 7 violent snake. Once the gamblers of the gambling city died, it was equivalent to the soul power of tens of thousands of people again, which was the source of the palace envoy's power. It was even more impossible for them to defeat this powerful Deshang stage master. Tianran, Guitian, Shimen Wuji, and Wan Wan followed closely behind. They all understood the seriousness of the matter. Now that the palace envoy was in the sky, he could fight with all his might. A powerhouse of Deshang realm was quite terrifying. Even if the 5 of them joined forces, they might not necessarily be able to defeat him. But no one retreated. This was because the 5 people here all hated the soul race to the bone. They all had a reason to kill them. The heavenly swords in the sky instantly blasted towards the 7 giant snakes. The majestic and sharp sword energy seemed to cause the entire world to tremble, and an incomparably tyrannical aura erupted. However, the palace emissary's domain power was completely released, and it was even more terrifying. The 7 giant snakes and the 2 heavenly swords clashed, and the 2 heavenly swords actually showed signs of collapsing. Mu Yu calmly stood in the void, and a cyan 8 trigrams array instantly appeared under his feet. The mysterious 8 trigrams array pattern formed a vortex, and this vortex intertwined through the entire gambling city. The life force of all the gamblers was gathered under his feet, and then it fused into the sword intent of the 2 heavenly swords that were about to collapse. The heavenly swords that were originally in imminent danger shook once again, and once again bloomed with exuberant sword energy, and actually blocked the attack of the 7 arts of the wild underworld in an instant. However, the power of the domain had already enveloped the 5 people. Within the power of the domain, the 7 giant snakes were almost everywhere. As long as the palace emissary willed it, the 7 giant snakes would appear anywhere. When Mu Yu reacted, 1,000 zhang long giant snake had already appeared behind them, and bit towards him, and Tian ran. Be careful! Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan joined hands, and a strange, evil aura erupted from their bodies, blocking the attack of the giant snake. However, the other 2 giant snakes also attacked them, sending them flying. A simple and tyrannical sword energy swept out, and Gu Etien's figure had already appeared at the neck of a giant white snake. The sword energy chopped down, and the giant white snake was instantly cut in half. The giant white snake disappeared, but it quickly condensed again, and wrapped around Gu Etien. Mu Yu's shadow sword slashed down from the sky, and the sword energy covered the giant white snake, shattering it and helping Gu Etien break free from the giant snake's entanglement. Mu Yu shouted, "Get close to me!" Shimen Wuji, Wan Wan, and the others immediately understood, and the 5 of them quickly dodged the attack of the giant white snake. They surrounded Mu Yu with their backs against each other, and Mu Yu was in the center. The wind heart linking array beneath Mu Yu's feet also enveloped Gu Etien, Shimen Wuji, and Wan Wan. We must join hands, otherwise we will inevitably die in the hands of this person, Mu Yu said in a deep voice. After all, the palace envoy was a Deshang stage expert, and it was impossible for them to gain any advantage in the domain of the palace envoy, so they could only fight together. You command, Guitian said. Shimin Wuji and Wan Wan didn't object. Only Mu Yu could use the array technique to guide the vitality of the revelry gamblers in the casino city, so letting Mu Yu command was the most correct choice. At this time, Mu Yu was in the center. He used the array to absorb the vitality of the casino city, and the vitality of the entire casino city shrouded the 5 of them. The powerful vitality ensured that they had a place in the domain of the palace envoy. The 7 giant snakes were also condensed from soul power, and were quite afraid of the vitality. How do we deal with a Deshang stage expert? Mu Yu's mind was spinning rapidly. So far, he had encountered more than 1 or 2 Deshang stage experts. Whether it was Venerable Ni Lei, White Ape Monster King, or other Monster Kings, these people gave him an unattainable feeling. The biggest difference between the Crossing Calamity stage and the Deshang stage was that the Deshang stage had initially mastered the ability of the domain. The domain was a trace of their own heavenly law that the Deshang stage comprehended, but no one told Mu Yu how to deal with this law. However, Mu Yu knew that any technique had a weakness. For example, his incomparably powerful heavenly sword could display a formidable power with the help of the sword intent of the firmament, but once it was trapped by an enchantment and cut off from the firmament, it would be limited. The reason why Deadwood Daddy's Desperation domain ability was ineffective against Mu Yu was because it was full of powerful poison, and poison was ineffective against Mu Yu. So where was the weakness of the wild dark 7 arts? The 5 Crossing Tribulation stage geniuses were wrapped in a cyan 8 trigrams array, forming a powerful barrier. Although it could not affect the palace envoy, it was still possible to avoid and resist the attacks of the 7 huge white snakes. It was just that the speed and strength of the attacks of the 7 giant white snakes had become more and more powerful. Every giant snake that came down seemed to make the world tremble, and the clouds in the sky had been shaken away. If it were not for the extraordinary strength of the 5 of them, perhaps they would not be able to block the attack of a giant snake. But if this continued, with their Crossing Tribulation stage spiritual power, it was impossible for them to outlast a Deshang stage expert. They were afraid that in a moment, they might be completely defeated by the palace envoy. You can still hold on for so long. I really underestimated you, but you will die today. The palace envoy shouted coldly, and the white soul power in his hand glowed again. The attack of the 7 giant snakes had become more and more intense. The wild dark 7 arts are everywhere in this domain, so how can we see through this domain? Mu Yu controlled the array and led everyone to dodge the attack of another giant white snake, but another giant snake had already appeared on the left. Gu Etienne's sword chi swept out, cutting off the attack of this giant snake. Forcibly withstanding the attack of the giant snake, the 5 of them retreated again. The giant snake above them appeared again, and Shimin Wuji's evil dark fan swept out a demonic blade, repelling the giant snake. Tian Ran also controlled the sharp immortal dew sword to cut down the giant snake below. Mu Yu recalled his experience of learning the Heavenly Dipper constellation array when he was in the array faction. The Heavenly Dipper constellation array could teleport the person using the array, but the teleportation target of this array could randomly appear in a certain range, so it couldn't be completely controlled. Mu Yu controlled this array by combining it with the falling dust footwork, allowing him to appear in a specific position. To some extent, the wild dark 7 arts was like the Heavenly Dipper constellation array improved by Mu Yu. It could appear in any place in the domain, but it was obviously more powerful than Mu Yu's Heavenly Dipper constellation array. Since that was the case, as long as he calculated the appearance pattern of the 7 giant snakes, then he should be able to predict the next movement of the 7 giant snakes, and avoid being so passive. Green array patterns lit up in Mu Yu's eyes. He kept dodging the attacks of the 7 giant snakes, but the attack positions of the 7 giant snakes gradually formed an extremely complicated trajectory map in his mind. Because of the wind-wind linking array, Gui Tian and the others could see the thoughts in Mu Yu's mind. You want to deduce how to deal with the domain? You can do that? Shimin Wuji was surprised. When the others saw that Mu Yu was actually deducing this domain in his mind, they were also surprised. They never thought that they could use the deduction ability to deal with a Deshang stage expert. But the deduction method in Mu Yu's mind was really complicated. Gui Tian and the others didn't have the talent in this regard, and couldn't keep up with Mu Yu's thoughts at all. Boom! The array formed by the 5 people was repelled by the 2 giant snakes. The spiritual power in everyone's body trembled, and their blood tumbled. The power of a Deshang stage expert was still beyond their imagination. Everyone suffered heavy injuries, but everyone gritted their teeth and endured. At this time, Mu Yu was already immersed in the complicated deduction in his mind, and he couldn't control the entire array. We will help Mu Yu delay a bit of time. Tian Ran understood Mu Yu and said to the others. Facing a Deshang stage palace envoy, they could only rely on Mu Yu. At this time, Mu Yu needed time to deduce the weakness of this domain. As long as he could deduce the weakness of this domain, it was possible to defeat the palace envoy. But the palace envoy's attack was really fierce, and with the strength of the 5 of them, it was still too difficult. Understood. Gui Tian simply replied. Every crack on his broadsword was suffused with a powerful sword qi, and it was stained with the vitality gathered by Mu Yu's 8 trigrams array. That overbearing sword qi unexpectedly formed a 10,000 zhang long sword qi. Tian Ran's immortal dew sword was like a pool of autumn water, helping Mu Yu block any violent giant white snake that swept over. Her face already showed a strenuous expression. Mu Yu was concentrating on the deduction at this time, so their strength couldn't be used in one place at the same time. Wan, you and I don't need to hide. Chapter 1061. Wan hesitated for a moment. Shimin Wuji, are you sure? Is there any other choice? Shimin Wuji closed the evil nether fan in his hand. Wan looked at Mu Yu and revealed a devastatingly beautiful smile. That's right, no matter what, Mu Yu and little sister Tian Ran are also our own people, so there is no need to hide anything. What are you 2 talking about? Gui Tian frowned. He advocated the simplest killing move, so he didn't know anything about the complicated derivation diagram in Mu Yu's mind, so he didn't understand what Shimin Wuji and Wan were talking about. You will understand soon. Shimin Wuji and Wan looked at each other and smiled. Shimin Wuji and Wan slowly walked over and held each other's hands. Then, a change suddenly occurred from their bodies. Black-colored aura flashed out from the body of Shimin Wuji, spiraling around his body, and his eyes were suffused with white light. On the other side, the whole body of Wan was enveloped by white light, and the eyes of Wan became pitch black like ink. An ancient aura flowed out from the bodies of Shimin Wuji and Wan, instantly engulfing the entire domain. As if an incomparably tyrannical sharp blade, it tore apart the domain's oppression and occupied its own space. The palace envoy in the sky was gobsmacked and exclaimed, "You 2 actually, how is this possible? Impossible? How can you 2? How can it not be?" Shimin Wuji and Wan seemed to have completely changed, as if they had become the purest balance of the world. Even the domain of Great Ascension Realm couldn't shrink back from them. The black and white aura on their body was becoming more and more powerful. In the gambling city, Little Handsome, who was cheering on Boyong Daoran, suddenly stopped and looked at the black and white aura in the sky with a puzzled expression on his little face. Little Handsome muttered. "What's wrong, little brat?" Boyong Daoran asked in puzzlement. Little Handsome scratched his head and said, "This is too strange. The shameless Shimin Wuji and the femme fatale Wan are actually, how did they hide it from me? Xie Bulo, that fellow hid it so deeply. Wait a minute. Doesn't that mean those 2 fellows are also Xie Bulo? That's right. It must be. I knew that when I played with them in the past. Their auras were very familiar, but they didn't tell me. Damn it, I'll beat them up next time. Gu Tian and Tian Ran also noticed the difference between Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan. At this time, Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan's bodies had lost their wanton and unruly evil aura. On the contrary, they were incomparably solemn. Their bodies were shrouded in black and white energy, as if they were different people. Or to be more precise, they were not people at all. The palace emissary suddenly laughed. I didn't expect the golden boy and jade girl of the evil faction to have such a special identity. They really fooled our soul race. Xiebu Lao is really powerful. In that case, I'd like to see what's so great about this pair of golden boy and jade girl formed from the chaos of yin and yang. Where is the Tao artifact that you are guarding? Chaos yin and yang. Tian Ren opened her eyes wide. She knew what the chaotic yin and yang meant because Mu Yu did not hold back anything from her. Mu Yu also had the chaotic yin and yang in his body. But perhaps even Mu Yu didn't expect that the golden boy and jade girl of the evil faction, Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan, were actually formed from the chaotic yin and yang, one black and one white. The chaotic yin and yang existed among the 9 Tao artifacts, and they were the most primitive and powerful magic treasures in the world. Controlling the chaotic yin and yang meant controlling the Tao artifact. Just like how the dead tree was the master of the chaotic yin and yang, he controlled the opening ruins cauldron. Mu Yu was the master of the chaotic yin and yang in the Array Palace, so he controlled the Array Palace. It seemed like Xiebu Lao also controlled a Tao artifact, and he had turned his chaotic yin and yang into Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan. There are many things that you don't know. You actually dared to attack our pavilion sound court. We will definitely kill you. Shimen Wucheng's entire body was shrouded in black light, but his eyes were filled with a strange white light. His entire body was filled with killing intent. This was the purest kind of devouring and killing intent, causing people to be terrified. Wan Wan's entire body was covered with a pure white light. This white light was very pure, and it no longer had the allure that could bring disaster to a country. In any case, it was thriving and gave people endless hope. However, her black eyes were incomparably deep, forming a sharp contrast with the white light around her body. Swish! Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan had already rushed out. Their black and white aura resonated with each other, forming a powerful aura. Instantly, the 7 huge snakes were smashed to pieces, but the 7 huge snakes instantly condensed together and continued to advance towards them. Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan didn't take the initiative to attack. Even if they were chaotic yin and yang, their current cultivation was still at the crossing calamity realm. Moreover, without Xiebu Lao, they couldn't fully display the powerful battle strength of chaotic yin and yang. The two of them intertwined with each other, forming the Tai Chi and yin-yang auras that surrounded Mu Yu's body. They fused into a black and white barrier that protected Mu Yu. The wild underworld 7 arts bombarded the black and white auras formed by them, but it didn't break their seal, nor did it affect Mu Yu. On the other hand, Gu Etienne and Tian Ran's sword auras would occasionally blast out from the black and white barrier, slashing towards the palace envoys. Hateful! What a powerful defensive ability! The palace envoys were furious. He had already devoured 2 crossing calamity realm subordinates, but when faced with the barrier formed by Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan, he was helpless. Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan's identities were hidden too deeply, and the chaotic yin and yang were extremely powerful existences. When combined with a person's consciousness, the power it contained was even more tyrannical. We must capture Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan alive before they fully mature. As long as we capture them, we can control Xiebu Lao's Tao artifact. At that time, the palace envoy's gaze fell on Mu Yu within the black and white barrier. Mu Yu was also someone that the Spiritas wanted to capture alive. This was because Mu Yu was even more difficult to deal with than Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan. He controlled another pair of chaotic yin and yang, and he also controlled a powerful Dao artifact. The palace envoys angrily shouted. The soul force in his hand once again erupted with a dazzling white light that violently swept towards the black and white barrier. He could see the limits of Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan. Even if they were chaotic yin and yang, they were still like humans and had weaknesses. Pung! The black and white barrier heavily struck. Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan's spinning speed had already begun to slow down. It was clear that they were still unable to completely contend against a Grand Ascension Realm Palace envoys. After persisting for a moment, they were already unable to hold on. Shimen Wucheng clenched his teeth and shouted, "Mu Yu, are you done yet? You want to stall for time? You're thinking too much. Although I have to admit that the 5 of you are indeed formidable, and you should be proud of yourselves for being able to delay us for so long, the game is over. You should obediently follow me back to see His Highness." The palace envoys sneered. As long as they captured Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan, and then captured Mu Yu, then even if 3 transcending tribulation experts died, it would still be worth it. The wild Netherworld 7 Uniques domain became more and more powerful. At a certain moment, the 7 huge white snakes suddenly fused together into a 10 million zhang long white snake. The white snake covered the sky, as if it wanted to crush the entire sky. Pressed down in the air, the entire gambling city fell into a boundless and endless night, without a trace of light shining out. Damn it! I can't hold on any longer. Shimen Wucheng fiercely shouted. Hold on a little longer. Wan Wan shouted. The black and white barrier formed by the 2 of them was like a drop in the ocean in front of this 10 million zhang long giant snake. It wasn't even worth mentioning. And at this time, the 10 million zhang long giant white snake's head was already smashing towards their black and white barrier. Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan both clenched their teeth. But at this time, Mu Yu suddenly opened his eyes. The complex and mysterious deduction diagram in his eyes instantly converged at a single point. I know how to deal with this domain. When Mu Yu opened his eyes and saw Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan's auras, he was stunned for a moment. But he quickly reacted. At this time, a black and a white aura leapt out from his body. It was another pair of chaotic yin and yang. The chaotic yin and yang instantly transformed into a black and white 8 trigrams array beneath Mu Yu's feet. The 8 trigrams array pattern spread to Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan's bodies. Then, the entire void violently rippled, as if a wave was rolling over them, bringing them into the wave. At the same time, the 10 million zhang long giant snake of the wild Netherworld 7 Unique bit down on Mu Yu. It bit down on the 8 trigrams array pattern formed by Mu Yu. The 8 trigrams array pattern fused with the vitality of the entire gambling city, forcibly blocking the giant snake's attack. Everyone had already moved away from the giant snake, leaving the killing range of the giant snake. You want to deal with my domain with just you? Ah, wishful thinking. The palace envoy disdainfully said. There had never been a person who dared to provoke a Great Ascension Realm Master when they were at the Transcending Tribulation Realm. Even if the palace envoy had just stepped into the Great Ascension Realm, there was still an insurmountable gap between the Great Ascension Realm and the Transcending Tribulation Realm. However, Mu Yu's eyes also shined with a black and white light. At the same time, golden and white runes revolved around him. A green rune swept out from beneath his feet, fiercely shooting behind him. Shwa! Just as the green rune reached behind Mu Yu, the giant snake's head also appeared from that place, biting down on the green rune. Good fellow! You can actually guess where my giant snake will appear. But let me tell you, in the face of absolute strength, any tricks are useless. The palace envoy stretched out his hand again. He controlled the giant snake, wanting to tear Mu Yu's green rune into pieces. However, His expression quickly changed because he realized that no matter how the giant snake bit, it could not break the green rune. The green rune was like a thread that wrapped around the giant white snake. In the blink of an eye, it crawled all over the giant snake's body and merged with it. Child's play. Is your array technique a joke? The palace envoy quickly calmed down because although the green rune was attached to his giant white snake, it did not have any effect on it. The giant white snake was still biting down on Mu Yu and the others. However, Mu Yu did not dodge this time. He stood in the same place and watched indifferently as the giant snake opened its bloody mouth and bit down. Although the giant white snake was biting down in a very arrogant manner, it was as if there was an insurmountable gap between it and the golden rune. It could not bite down. Chapter 1062. In front of absolute strength, your formation technique is basically unable to block. Palace envoy sneered while looking at Mu Yu. After that he integrated the soul power in his hand into Wild Dark 7 unique, and white light flourished all over the body of White Snake. Gotcha! So close yet worlds apart only persisted for a moment, then unexpectedly began to show signs of collapse. Cracks crawled all over the golden barrier, then it collapsed into innumerable fragments. But Mu Yu didn't panic. He had already condensed cyan-colored 8 trigrams formation under his feet, and at the same time, the green-colored formation patterns on the body of White Snake also began to shine, resonating with the 8 trigrams formation under Mu Yu's feet. White Snake was already about to break Mu Yu's formation technique, but suddenly its entire body inexplicably trembled, and its huge body was forcibly straightened, forming a straight line. Nevertheless, its big mouth still bit towards Mu Yu. But its bloody mouth actually directly penetrated through the black and white barrier, penetrated through the body of Mu Yu's group, and didn't bite Mu Yu's group. How can this be? Palace envoy was greatly surprised. He clearly saw Mu Yu's group before his eyes, and thought that it was enough to swallow Mu Yu's group into the belly of White Snake, but he didn't expect that even after the tyrannical White Snake bit through the golden formation patterns, it still didn't bite Mu Yu. Formation technique, wind one line. Formation technique, mirror image formation. It's time for us to counterattack. Mu Yu had already told the plan in his mind to everyone through wind one heart-linking formation. Shimin Wuji and Wan also stopped, then looking at each other, they flew towards different direction. Counterattack? You are too naive. Palace envoy saw that Shimin Wuji and Wan had already flown towards different direction, and this kind of action was exactly what he wanted. The sky covering Big Snake was already forced to move in a straight line, but this kind of formation technique couldn't restrict it for long. In an instant, he let Big Snake get rid of the formation technique, then simultaneously disappeared from that place, and once again changed into 7 huge snakes, and separately flew towards Shimin Wuji's group. If you don't split up, you might still have a chance. But if you split up, you'll die. The palace envoy sneered. The giant snake could appear anywhere in his domain. Before Shimin Wuji and the others could even stand firm, the giant snake had already appeared behind them and bit down. But in the next moment, the palace envoy's smile froze. This was because the giant snake had not bitten Shimin Wuji and the others. Whoosh! Gu Etien's sword intent swept out. He seemed to have predicted where the giant snake would attack from. In just a single exchange, the insufferably arrogant giant snake was torn to pieces and turned into nothingness, and Shimin Wuji, Wan and Tian Ran also successively beheaded the giant snake that had just appeared. The entire process was clean and efficient, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. How is this possible? Bastard! I'm going to kill you all! The palace envoy angrily roared. White soul force spread out from his body once more, condensing into 7 giant snakes that fell towards them. But at this time, Mu Yu had already appeared at the very center of the palace envoy's domain. The powerful auras of Gu Etian and the others had completely gathered on Mu Yu's body. The endless sword intent in Mu Yu's hand suddenly exploded and stabbed towards a single point. The palace envoy's pupils shrank. That point was the weak point of his entire domain. Any magic technique had a weak point, but the palace envoy had hidden his domain ability very well. It was simply impossible for a normal person to sense it. However, he never imagined that Mu Yu would actually be able to accurately find the weak point of his domain. Bang! The palace envoy angrily roared. He could no longer maintain his domain, and it suddenly exploded, dissipating without a trace. He angrily looked at Mu Yu. To be defeated by a group of crossing calamity juniors, this was the disgrace of a great Ascension Realm Master. But he still couldn't understand. With Mu Yu's cultivation, even if he had discovered the weak point of his domain, it shouldn't have been enough to destroy it. Just how had Mu Yu accomplished this? The palace envoy shifted his gaze to Mu Yu's shadow clone sword. Suddenly, he was stunned. The tip of the shadow clone sword was actually twined with two strange black and white auras. This black and white aura was even more profound than yin and yang. It seemed as if it could swallow all things and destroy everything. Is that life and death aura? You can actually control life and death aura to such a degree? The palace envoy actually recognized the true nature of life and death aura. It was clear that he knew how terrifying these things were. At this time, he was no longer looking at Mu Yu with contempt, but deep shock. In his impression, no one had ever been able to control life and death aura because they were the most primitive forces of the world. They controlled the balance of all things and could not be controlled by anyone. Mu Yu gasped for breath. He had to admit that the palace envoy was still quite powerful. This sword had gathered the strength of the other four people. If it weren't for the four of them, it would be impossible for Mu Yu to defeat a great Ascension Realm envoy with his own strength. However, this sword had almost consumed most of his spiritual power. Although the great Ascension Realm envoy's domain was broken, he was still a great Ascension Realm Master after all. There was an insurmountable gap between him and the crossing calamity stage. However, Mu Yu would not give up. The array patterns on his body surged, and the entire gambling city once again soared with a strong vitality. It soared straight into the sky, causing the palace envoy's face to change. Hateful. Just you wait. The next time I meet you, I will definitely kill you. The palace envoy had already retreated. Just now, his soul power was suppressed by the people of Gambling City, and he suffered a little injury. Now that his domain ability was broken, the soul power in his body had been consumed even more. If he didn't leave, he was afraid that he would really die in this place today. I won't give you any chance. Mu Yu had condensed his sword intent again. The sword intent mixed with vitality was unstoppable as it blasted toward the palace envoy. He was ready to kill the palace envoy when he couldn't resist. However, at this moment, an even more terrifying aura shot from afar. This aura was heavy and powerful, like a giant rolling over, causing Mu Yu and the others' faces to change again. Another great Ascension Realm Master. Whoosh! Mu Yu's condensed sword intent was hit by a white light and disappeared instantly. Palace envoy, you're a little slow. The palace envoy said gloomily. A sacred white shadow appeared beside the palace envoy. This person's aura was comparable to the palace envoy at his peak. I thought you would get rid of them yourself. I didn't expect you to be beaten so badly. You even lost 2 of your own people. What a disgrace. The palace envoy said indifferently. The second great Ascension Realm Master of the Threefold Palace. Mu Yu and the others' hearts had sunk to the bottom. They could have killed the palace envoy just now, but they didn't expect the reinforcements of the Threefold Palace to come so quickly and save the palace envoy. At this time, Mu Yu and the others' cultivation were at the crossing calamity stage. Even with the help of the gambling city, they were no match for the palace envoy. Stop talking nonsense. Capture them alive for me. I will go back and explain the rest to the Lord. The palace envoy retreated to the side in anger. He was the same as Mu Yu and the others. He didn't have the strength to fight at all. The appearance of the palace envoy destroyed the hope of Mu Yu and the others. It was impossible for them to defeat another great Ascension Realm Master. What should we do now? Shimen Wuhao asked. Fight. Gu Yitian didn't have any thoughts of retreating. We are no match for them. Wan Wan frowned. We still have to fight, Mu Yu said. Mu Yu moved his sword. He really didn't have the means to resist another great Ascension Realm Master. At this time, the situation had been reversed. But in their current state, it was basically impossible for them to escape from the hands of a great Ascension Realm Master. Then why aren't you obediently waiting to be captured? The palace envoy sneered. The terrifying domain ability had already swept out and sealed their surroundings. The domain ability of the palace envoy made them unable to resist. Damn it! Mu Yu clenched his teeth. If his cultivation was higher, he would be able to rely on the gambling city to fight with the palace envoy again. But now he didn't even have the ability to retreat. Just when their heart was feeling incomparably heavy, the domain that was tightly suppressing them suddenly seemed to be torn apart by someone. Then Mu Yu and the others felt their whole body become light. At the same time, another powerful aura protected them. The third great Ascension Realm Master. Who is it? The palace envoy turned around and stared at the outsider. I think it's not too late for me to come. A gentle but resolute voice came from the sky. This voice was like a ray of light in the darkness, making everyone's mind shake. Mu Yu turned around and looked at the person. A white robe fluttered in the wind. He was gentle and elegant. An indifferent aura surrounded him. He stood there like a hard wall, making people feel at ease. Qingyan. Eldest senior brother Yu, Mu Yu looked at Qingyan in shock. The aura of a great Ascension Realm Master actually came from Qingyan. Qingyan smiled at Mu Yu. Sorry, when I got the news, I tried my best to rush here. Fortunately, I finally made it. Shimen Wuji, Wan Wan, and the others were also surprised. Qingyan had actually stepped into the great Ascension Realm? When the palace envoy and the palace envoy saw Qingyan, they had already put away their contempt. Qingyan's aura was calm and condensed. Even the palace envoy at his peak couldn't see through it. Sword Shadow Chun Feng's eldest disciple, Qingyan? It seems that we have all underestimated you. The palace envoy said. Qingyan walked to Mu Yu's side and put his hand on Mu Yu's shoulder. A familiar and mellow spirit power entered Mu Yu's body, helping him recover from his injuries. Are you okay? Qingyan asked. I'm fine. Mu Yu replied. To be able to force a great Ascension Realm Master to this extent, you have done well. Qingyan smiled. It's a pity that I can't kill him. As long as the palace envoy came one step later, I would definitely be able to kill him. Mu Yu shook his head. Qingyan turned around and looked indifferently at the severely injured palace emissary. He said, he won't survive. When the palace envoy in the distance heard this sentence, his face changed. However, the palace envoy on the side laughed out loud. His eyes were like a poisonous snake as he looked at Qingyan. Qingyan, you have such big words. You want to kill someone in front of me? Have you asked me? Qingyan slowly reached out his hand and a steady sword appeared in his hand. The sword light was restrained and not a bit of the sword edge was revealed. It looked ordinary and mediocre. But it was this sword that made everyone feel an indescribable sense of oppression when it cut through the air. I don't need to ask you. Qingyan flicked his wrist and the tip of his sword suddenly burst open. The surging sword qi was like a river that had burst its banks. It surged out, swallowing up the entire space in the blink of an eye. Everyone felt as if their bodies were being pulled by something. They lost control of their bodies in front of this sword chi. 1. The heavily injured palace emissary suddenly widened his eyes. His body was covered with cracks. The sword chi had unknowingly pierced through his head, crushing his soul and destroying his consciousness. Because the people of the third layer palace must die. Qingyan slowly said. Bang! The palace envoy's body exploded, turning into specks of starlight and dissipating in the air. Chapter 1063. Silence. Mu Yu and the others were shocked by Qingyan's sword. Qingyan's sword was unbelievably fast, so fast that even the other Grand Ascension Stage Palace captain did not have time to react. You, how is this possible? The palace captain was shocked and angry, and the arrogant look on his face had already disappeared. He never thought that Qingyan would actually kill the palace captain in front of him. In front of him, a dignified Grand Ascension Stage expert, he could not react at all. You also have to die. Qingyan just lightly raised the sword in his hand. The erosion-cleansing sword was solid and steady, and instantly formed a vortex in the sky, communicating with the whole world. Whoosh! The third heavenly sword's sword intent poured down from the sky, and compared to Mu Yu and Tian Rant's joint attack, it was 100 times more tyrannical. The sky seemed to be slightly shaken by this sword. This sword intent was incomparably terrifying, and the brilliant heavenly might was unparalleled in the world. The aura passed down shook the whole gambling city, as if the whole world could not bear this sword. Not only the palace captain, but even Mu Yu and the others were shocked. Qingyan was actually powerful to this extent? Soul technique roar. Heaven-conquering tyrant roar. The palace captain's face changed, and a white soul bead appeared around him. The soul bead bloomed with sacred light, and the white light spread out, as if the whole sky was covered with a layer of sacred armor. The white light shone in the sky, and wanted to destroy Qingyan's heavenly sword. The palace captain's domain. Heaven-conquering tyrant roar. However, Qingyan's heavenly sword did not move, and the mighty and steady sword chi slashed down, and actually directly tore the tyrannical domain displayed by the palace captain, and broke it into thousands of fragments. All the fragments were reassembled by a strange force, and condensed into a giant white sword, and in turn, blasted towards the palace captain. You, the palace captain gritted his teeth, and directly turned around, tore the void, and turned into a white light and merged into the void. In just a single exchange, the hall captain wanted to flee. With the dignity of a Deshang stage master, the palace captain felt extremely aggrieved. He thought that when he arrived here under the guidance of the palace envoy, he would be able to capture Mu Yu and the others, but he never expected that a Deshang stage master, Qingyan, would appear. Qingyan's cultivation was even stronger than his, and he killed the palace envoy in front of him. The moment the hall envoy was killed, the hall commander understood that he was no match for Qingyan. If he had chosen to fight instead of running away, he would have been the next to die. He didn't have the courage to fight. He had to escape. However, Qingyan's sword intent had already pierced through and slashed down at the white light in the void. Ah! The palace captain's scream came from the white light. An arm flashed out from the white light. The arm glowed with white light, and then the white light gradually dissipated. The arm became incomparably ugly, like the dirty claws of a wild beast. Then, it suddenly exploded in the air, and turned into powder. Everything returned to tranquility. The heavenly sword in the air had already disappeared, and Qingyan slowly restrained his aura. What a pity, you cut off your arm and ran away. The third layer palace's ability to escape is quite formidable. Qingyan said with some regret. Mu Yu looked at the place where the palace captain had fled. There was another domain fluctuation there, and he already knew what it was. It was just like when the Azure Dragon and the other monster kings sealed their domain abilities in something and gave them to Mu Yu. The palace captain had also used the domain ability given to him by others to escape. Otherwise, Qingyan's sword would have been enough to thoroughly kill him. Shimin Wuji, Wan Wan, and the others bitterly smiled. Qingyan was already powerful to such a degree. Although he hadn't killed the palace captain, Qingyan's heavenly sword had actually caused the palace captain to lose the courage to fight. It was enough to look down on the world. The heavenly sword is truly fierce. Gu Etian silently looked at the three giant swords. He knew that it was impossible for his broadsword to contend against the heavenly sword. However, his eyes revealed an even more powerful fighting spirit. As a body cultivator, he would never stop because of the strength in front of him. He would strive to improve himself and challenge the heavenly sword. Mu Yu and Tian Ran had already retrieved their heavenly sword. The two of them were somewhat tired. Dealing with a great ascension stage person was truly too difficult. However, the palace captain had been killed. No matter how big the price was, it was worth it. The giant snake dissipated, and the dark clouds in the sky also dispersed. The sun once again revealed its radiance, illuminating the entire earth. Senior brother, you came at the right time. Mu Yu looked at Qingyan, and said with complicated feelings. After parting in Clearwater City, the few of them had chosen their own paths. However, Qingyan still took on the responsibility of the eldest senior brother. He cultivated to become stronger, looked for his junior brothers, and looked for his master. Now that they met again, Qingyan had already reached the great ascension stage. The eldest senior brother would always be the eldest senior brother. Qingyan looked at Mu Yu gently. The eyes of the two brothers met in an instant. It was so familiar. There was no obstruction. It was as if they had returned to the carefree time of the Luochen mountain. At that time, Qingyan was still the responsible eldest senior brother, and Mu Yu was the quarreling junior brother. Qingyan asked, "Do you still remember the promise between you and me?" That promise was the promise that Qingyan made to help Mu Yu on the way to the Elixir Cauldron sect. Mu Yu knew what Qingyan was talking about. At that time, Qingyan had been waiting for Mu Yu and his three junior brothers to return home. He helped Mu Yu. In return, he only wanted a golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass from Mu Yu. When a person didn't lose himself, the heavenly heart reincarnation grass would emit a golden light. Mu Yu stretched out his hand. A golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass appeared in his palm. He said softly, "Senior brother, this is what you wanted." The leaves of the heavenly heart reincarnation grass swayed in the sunlight. It looked so pure. It was like a golden sun that warmed people's hearts. Qingyan took the golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass. The golden heavenly heart reincarnation grass shone in his hand as if it was carrying a heavy responsibility. "At least, you're the first one to return home." Qingyan's smile was very gentle. The gamblers in the gambling city were still reveling. However, there were a few people floating in the sky above the gambling city. They had joined forces to deal with the Great Ascension Stage Palace Envoy with their Tribulation Stage cultivation, but they had also expended a lot of energy. Fortunately, Qingyan had arrived at the last moment and killed the Palace Envoy. Otherwise, the Palace Envoy would have definitely escaped from this place. Mu Yu looked at Qingyan. His senior brother was always so gentle and indifferent. Even if they hadn't seen each other for a long time, his senior brother was still mature and steady. "You're very strong." Gu Etian looked at Qingyan. His eyes were still filled with a strong fighting spirit. Gu Etian had always wanted to fight with Qingyan since he went to Mount Fulong to look for Yuman in the Moyun mountain range. However, Qingyan didn't give Gu Etian a chance. At that time, Gu Etian's strength was only equivalent to the foundation establishment stage, while Qingyan's cultivation was at the Jindan stage. Now that they met again, Qingyan was still one stage stronger than them. "We shouldn't be opponents." Qingyan smiled. Their opponents were not each other, but the third palace. Gu Etian's fighting spirit did not diminish. "I will challenge you in the future." After we destroy the third palace, if we are still alive at that time, I will give you a chance. Qingyan nodded. Gu Etian looked at Mu Yu and said, I also want to challenge you. Gu Etian only had eyes for his opponent. Okay. Mu Yu nodded. He respected an opponent like Gu Etian. A person who couldn't cultivate and relied on physical cultivation to reach this point. His perseverance was amazing. Even though Gu Etian was still not Mu Yu's opponent, Mu Yu would never slack off. Gu Etian would work harder. He wouldn't let Gu Etian surpass him. Looks like today is the day of celebration in the gambling city. I'm thinking about whether I should ask Dubbying to treat today as an anniversary. Shiman Wuji looked at the gamblers below. It was these gamblers who gave them the strength to deal with the palace envoy. Then I'll name it. I shouted the loudest just now. Let's call it Xiao Shuai's Gambling Day. Xiao Shuai held 2 small flags in his hands and waved them happily. Mu Yu touched his forehead. He felt helpless about Xiao Shuai's shamelessness. They returned to the gambling city. All the gamblers in the gambling city were affected by Mu Yu's array. They were still partying tirelessly. It was very lively. Boyang Daoren greeted Gu Etian. He looked at Mu Yu and the others in awe. Senior Boyang. Mu Yu and Qingyan cupped their hands. Boyang Daoren quickly smiled. I don't dare to be called senior. I didn't expect that after not seeing you for a few years, you would all become so powerful. This old man is just a speck of dust at the bottom of the cultivation world. I don't dare to be called senior. Senior must be joking. Gu Etian is our friend. You are Gu Etian's master. Naturally, you are our senior. Mu Yu said with a smile. Yes, when we settled down in the Moyen mountain range, Senior helped our master many times. Even if we have become powerful now, we can't forget this seniority. Qingyan said. Boyang Daoren also sighed with emotion. Just now, he saw the battle in the sky. It could be said that he had a deep impression. He also understood what kind of powerful existence Mu Yu and Qingyan were. It was a height that he would never be able to reach in his lifetime. However, Boyang Daoren also had his own pride. He looked at the determined Gu Etian and his heart was filled with pride. Boyang Daoren was only in the Jindan period. However, his disciple could also be so talented. How could he have thought that he would be able to cultivate such a persevering disciple like Gu Etian? Not to mention that the Falling Dust sect, which was ranked last among the 20 sects in the Moyen mountain range, had hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Their disciples were even more powerful. Master, I'm sorry to have made you suffer, Gu Etian said. Boyang Daoren patted Gu Etian's shoulder. I have become a burden to you. Gu Etian turned to Mu Yu and said, If you help me protect my master, I will go with you to deal with the Sanchong Palace. Mu Yu nodded and said, Don't worry. Right now, there are 2 safest places in the cultivation world. I will send Senior Boyang to our array sect. The people from the Sanchong Palace can't enter there. Thank you, Gu Etian said. Mu Yu glanced at the gamblers who were still reveling. The array pattern in his hand appeared. Then, he removed the illusion array on everyone and woke them up from the illusion. After these people woke up, they were all surprised and doubtful. Some of them still wanted to continue and were reluctant to wake up from the dream of making a lot of money. What's going on? Where's my money? Why was it a dream? I just dreamt that I made 10 million. I won every bet just now. My luck was excellent. Many gamblers slapped their thighs and felt that it was a good dream. However, it was only a good dream. Then who won the competition in the arena just now? Right. Where are the dirty and despicable people from the Sanchong Palace? Were they defeated? They are so shameless. When I first heard that someone was slandering the Sanchong Palace, I even argued with that person. Now I know that the news was not groundless. Chapter 1064. Dubi Ing had an exquisite and luxurious courtyard. At this moment, Mu Yu and the others were already sitting in the courtyard of this courtyard. The courtyard provided by Dubi Ing was quiet and secluded. Everyone was sitting in different places in the courtyard. Shimen Wuhao was half lying on a flat stone, and in his hand was a jug of wine, which he was pouring himself. Wan Wan was casually sitting on the water grass beside the small pond. Her feet were in the clear water as she played with the goldfish in the river. There was a banyan tree in the courtyard with a swing hanging from it. Little Handsome was happily sitting on the swing, swinging non-stop. Only he didn't have any worries. Mu Yu leaned on the tree trunk and stared at Little Handsome's back as he pondered. Tian Ran was sitting on a chair beside Mu Yu. There was a wooden table in front of her. At this moment, she was holding her chin and curiously sizing up Mu Yu and Wan Wan. Gu Yitian and Boyang Daoren were sitting on one side. Boyang Daoren was still somewhat reserved. Qingyan sat opposite Tian Ran and poured a pot of tea for everyone. After the battle, no one seemed to want to talk. Many things had happened today and the gambling city was no longer a safe place. Boyang Daoren was already resting in the room of the courtyard. His body was still very weak and Mu Yu had already treated him. After Gu Yitian settled his master, he walked out of the room and silently sat opposite Qingyan. Qingyan also poured a cup of tea for him. "Thank you," Gu Yitian simply said. Mu Yu looked at Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan and said, "I didn't expect that you two were actually chaotic yin and yang." Shimen Wuji leisurely drank a mouthful of wine and said with a smile, "The old man only fancied me and Wan Wan's physiques, so he sealed the power of yin and yang in our bodies. Originally, we were disinclined to use this power. In any case, Wan Wan has never liked me." Wan Wan's feet swayed in the water and she smiled. "You don't look mature enough. I prefer masculine ones." Shimen Wuji went around the cultivation world to flirt with the young talents of the various sects, and Wan Wan was notorious, but they had never had an accident. Their confidence must have come from the primal chaos yin and yang in their bodies. Xiao Shui swung high on the swing, holding two small flags in his hands. He asked excitedly, "Then which Tao artifact do you belong to?" This was also what Mu Yu wanted to know. Regarding the 9 Tao artifacts, Mu Yu only knew about the opening ruins cauldron and the array hall. He did not know about the rest. Shimen Wucheng and Wan Wan looked at each other. Shimen Wucheng said, "The old man's Tao artifact is called Xie Tian. It is a very bloody axe. One axe can suppress heaven and earth and turn everything evil. Unfortunately, it is not here." "Not here? Even you guys can't find it?" Mu Yu asked in surprise. Shimen Wuji shrugged his shoulders. "Primal chaos yin and yang is only sealed in our bodies. We can use primal chaos yin and yang, but we are not primal chaos yin and yang. That Xie Tian is in another world. It is suppressing something powerful. Wan Wan and I are the same as the 5 of you. We are people who cannot survive. It is only the primal chaos yin and yang that allows us to survive. This power is very difficult to control. I need to be with Wan Wan to unleash its power. Normally, Wan Wan is not willing to tease other girls with me. I can't do anything about it." Wan Wan glanced at Shimen Wuji and snorted non-committally. She moved her feet, and the goldfish in the pond scattered and gathered again. "You guys are also people who cannot survive?" Mu Yu was a little surprised. The 4 of them were people who could not survive. He did not expect Shimen Wucheng to be the same. The banyan tree beside Mu Yu sprouted and formed a wooden chair. He sat down beside Tianran. Qingyan said, "Everyone's physique is divided into yin and yang in addition to the 5 elements. I think Shimen Wucheng, your physique is yang, so in order to survive, you sealed the primal chaos yin and yang in your body, right? Wan Wan's physique is yin, so she sealed the yang energy." When Shimen Wucheng used the primal chaos yin and yang, his body was covered in black light. That was the yin energy, But Wan Wan was the exact opposite. Shimin Wucheng looked at Qingyan with a face full of smiles. I can't hide anything from you. Qingyan, I always thought Luo Shang was very powerful. I never thought you would know even more. Qingyan indifferently said, because Kong Kong and Miao Miao have the same physique as you guys. They also have the primal chaos yin and yang in their bodies. Kong Kong and Miao Miao also have the same? Tian Ran cried out in surprise. Mu Yu nodded thoughtfully. Actually, when he first learned that Shimin Wucheng and Wan Wan had the primal chaos yin and yang, he already thought of the troublemakers from the Falling Dust sect. They often caused chaos in the Falling Dust sect. After the two of them left the Moyen mountain range, their cultivation speed was extremely fast. It was very abnormal. He didn't expect Kong Kong and Miao Miao to also have a pair of primal chaos yin and yang. I knew it, those two definitely have some secret. Sure enough, they have the primal chaos yin and yang. Even I was fooled. Too bad, next time I will spank them. Little Shuai waved his little flag and said with dissatisfaction. Little Shuai was usually very close to the primal chaos yin and yang. When he opened the cauldron of ruins, he chased after Big Black, Big White, Little Black, and Little White. When he was at the Falling Dust Mountain, he and Kong Kong and Miao Miao went everywhere to cause trouble. However, the primal chaos yin and yang in their bodies were sealed. Not only Little Shuai, even the two of them didn't know about this. Little Shuai jumped onto Mu Yu's shoulder and said, Mu Yu, how about you seal Little Black and Little White into the body of a little brat? I will take them to conquer the world. Mu Yu rubbed Little Shuai's head and helplessly said, I still don't know how to perfectly use the power of primal chaos yin and yang. How do I seal it? Next time you see Kong Kong and Miao Miao, go play with them yourself. Then, Mu Yu thought of Kong Kong and Miao Miao and asked, Senior brother, what is Master's Dao treasure? Qingyan gently picked up his teacup and took a sip before saying, Master's Dao treasure is a mountain peak. A mountain peak? Mu Yu frowned. I know, it is the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak, right? Little Shuai jumped from Mu Yu's shoulder back to the swing. This time, Mu Yu was truly shocked. Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak? Heaven Birth Reincarnation Seal? Last time, on the demon island of the Sea Demon King, they entered the demon subduing pagoda and used the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak's cave to return to the past. They also saw Master's image in the pavilion of the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak when he was young. Qingyan nodded and said, Mu Yu, I believe you went to the demon island and obtained the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Seal, right? Mu Yu silently opened his hand. A mountain peak that looked like a paradise appeared in his hand. This mountain peak was very small, like a work of art. It was very exquisite. A waterfall poured down from the top of the mountain. The flowers and trees on the mountain peak were flourishing. It was like a small world with its own rules circulating. One could even see bees and butterflies dancing among the flowers. Halfway up the mountain peak, there was a simple and dignified pavilion. There was a cave on the side, which was the passage back to the past. On the demon island, Mu Yu and Gui Shiming used this passage to return to the past and found the whereabouts of the soul transference. Unfortunately, without the demon subduing pagoda to provide powerful spiritual energy, the space-time passage in the cave had been sealed. There was no way to activate it again, even with Mu Yu's current ability. Senior brother, how did you know? Mu Yu never knew that he had accidentally obtained his master's Dao tool. He should have thought of it earlier. Last time, when he entered the Heaven Birth Reincarnation Seal, he sat in the pavilion and saw the illusion left behind by his master. At that time, his master was still very young. He didn't know Mu Yu and only told Mu Yu that he was someone who lived in the past. Mu Yu still didn't know what someone who lived in the past meant. He always felt that his master's words had a hidden meaning. Qingyan looked at the exquisite mountain peak in Mu Yu's hand and said, Anshu told me. I once thought of a way to go to the demon subduing pagoda, But when I got there, I found that the Sea Demon King had been born. It had something to do with you. The Heaven Birth Reincarnation Peak also disappeared. I thought it was you who took it. Now it seems that it was indeed so. Muyu thought of Kong Kong, Meow Meow, and Lon Linger, who went missing in the 50-mile garden in the south. He couldn't wait to ask, Senior Brother, when did you see Enshu? Is Enshu okay? Were Kong Kong, Meow Meow, and Lon Linger taken away by Enshu? Ever since the immortal confinement prison in the Moyun mountain range was lifted, Enshu also mysteriously disappeared. Muyu didn't know how Enshu was doing now, but he didn't think in a bad direction. Qingyan nodded slightly. 3 months ago, Enshu found me and told me that I had to find Master's Dao tool. Enshu said that he still had to complete the mission that Master gave him, so he left in a hurry. As for Kong Kong, Meow Meow, and Lon Linger, they should have been taken away by Enshu. Muyu asked in surprise, Enshu is going to complete the mission that Master gave him? What mission is that? Qingyan shook his head. I don't know. He refused to tell me. He said that it was a task given to him by Master, and that he had to complete it. I offered to help him, but he asked me to find Master's Dao artifact. Muyu said with some worry, but Enshu's cultivation. Senior Brother, is Enshu's cultivation. It's during the Jindan period, but he has some means of master. He said that he was enough to deal with some things. I didn't dare to refute Enshu's words. You also know Enshu's temper. Qingyan said helplessly. Even if Qingyan's cultivation had now stepped into the Deshang stage, he was still a junior in front of Enshu. He would listen to Enshu's words. Not only Qingyan, even Muyu, if he met Enshu, he would not dare to be too presumptuous. Enshu used to be extremely strict with their cultivation and punish them with bad cooking skills. They were still in awe of him. Everyone fell into silence. The pressure given to them by the Threefold Palace was too great. Even Qingyan could not fight against the entire Threefold Palace by himself, because the strength of the Threefold Palace was unfathomable. I hope Master is still well. Muyu silently held Tianran's hand. Tianran bit her lips and looked gloomy. She hadn't recognized her father until now, not to mention that she didn't even know the whereabouts of her mother. Shimen Wuji said with a hearty smile, Don't worry, my master and your master disappeared at the same time. Although there is no specific information, but I know that whether it is my family's unscrupulous old man or your family's master, both of them are still alive. This is inevitable. Tianran was overjoyed and eagerly asked, Shimen Wuji, is what you said true? Have you seen them? Chapter 1065. Because the yin and yang chaos did not change owners, Muyu said. Qingyan nodded with a serious expression. Although Kong Kong and Meow Meow do not know that the yin and yang chaos power is sealed in their bodies, they have an inexplicable sense of closeness to Master. They both believe that Master is still alive. It was just like the yin and yang chaos of the Pill Cauldron sect had not changed owners. Because Deadwood's soul was protected by the soul-fixing array, he was not truly dead. That was why Muyu could not control the yin and yang chaos of the Open Ruins Cauldron. If something happened to Xiebulo, the yin and yang chaos in Shimen Wuji and Wan Wan's bodies would react. Kong Kong and Meow Meow should know about this as well. Tianran excitedly held Muyu's hand. She had never truly acknowledged her father. All she wanted was to reunite with her family. He is still alive. Tianran's eyes were filled with tears. Muyu hugged Tianran's shoulder tightly and said firmly, Master will survive. We will save him. Yes. Tianran choked with sobs. Qingyan slowly put down his teacup and said, Muyu, come with me. I have something to talk to you about in private. Just the two of us. The rest of you have used up a lot of energy in the fight. You should recover first. Okay. Muyu nodded, and the others did not say anything. The two of them left the yard and went to an empty courtyard. Xiao Shuai ran over, and Qing Yan did not stop him. Xiao Shuai was Master's sword spirit. He was not an outsider. Senior, what is it? Mu Yu waved his hand and 2 chairs appeared beside him. He sat down with Qing Yan. Qing Yan was silent for a moment. He looked at Mu Yu and smiled. The gate of hell and Stargate were destroyed by you? Mu Yu nodded and calmly said, yes. Do you know the secret beneath the gate of hell? Qing Yan asked again. Mu Yu said in surprise, Senior Marshal Brother, you also know about what happened below the gate of hell? Did you go there too? Below the gate of hell was a ghost pit, where a Gui Zu was sealed. Ordinary people couldn't enter at all. She didn't expect Qing Yan to know about this. Qing Yan shook his head. I don't have to go there to find out. There are many secrets I can learn from other places. Other places? Senior brother, where have you been all this time? Mu Yu remembered that he met Shadowkill Hades at the gate of hell. Hades had always wanted to find Qing Yan's whereabouts. It seemed that it was because Qing Yan had done something that offended the Shadowman organization. Qing Yan did not answer Mu Yu directly. Instead, he said, let's not talk about this anymore. You're the only one left now. I'm the only one left? What do you mean? Mu Yu asked puzzledly. Qing Yan said slowly, I've stepped into the Mahayana stage. Mu Yu was stunned and then said in surprise, you mean Luo Shang and Xiang Nan? Yes, Luo Shang and Xiang Nan have become Mahayana stage cultivators. They have field ability, Qing Yan said. Mu Yu was a little embarrassed. He had always thought that his cultivation speed was extremely fast, but compared with his 3 senior martial brothers, he was still far behind. If his cultivation had not reached the Mahayana stage, it would be very difficult for him to fight with the 3rd palace. Xiao Shuai poked his head out and pretended to be sad. He jumped onto Mu Yu's shoulder, pulled Mu Yu's ear, and said in disappointment, Mu Yu, you are so disappointing. Look at your 3 senior martial brothers. They are already at the Mahayana stage, but you are still at the 6th heaven of the crossing tribulation stage. You don't cultivate properly and are always lazy. I've been urging you every day, but you just don't cultivate seriously. Look, you're dragging us down now, aren't you? Mu Yu rubbed Xiao Shuai's head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. You talk too much. If you talk more nonsense, I'll sell you to the brothel. Is there delicious food in the brothel? Xiao Shuai asked excitedly. Mu Yu flicked Xiao Shuai's head, feeling a headache coming on. He kept talking about food. Having said that, Mu Yu didn't think that he would be the only one still stuck at the tribulation transcendence stage among his 4 fellow disciples. It was no wonder that Luo Shang and Xiang Nan were able to destroy the Red Dust sect so easily. It turned out that both of them had reached the Grand Ascension stage. Even 10 Red Dust sects wouldn't be able to resist 2 Grand Ascension stage cultivators. I will work hard. I won't be a burden to everyone, Mu Yu said seriously. He did not want to always be protected by his senior brothers. He should also cultivate in seclusion for a period of time, improve his cultivation, comprehend his own domain ability, and step into the Mahayana stage. Qing Yan shook his head. You misunderstood me. This has nothing to do with your cultivation speed. Your cultivation talent is already very strong, and you don't lose to us. It's just that the 3 of us didn't comprehend our own domain, but Spirit Lord Yu Meng's domain. Mu Yu asked in confusion, what's the difference? Let's put it this way. If we follow the normal cultivation speed, I'll only be at the crossing tribulation stage now, and I won't step into the Mahayana stage. Luo Shang and Xiang Nan are about the same. The 4 of us haven't cultivated for long enough. Maybe in 2 more years, we'll be able to step into the Mahayana stage. However, time is limited, at least not now, Qing Yan said slowly. Then how did you step into the Mahayana stage? Mu Yu faintly felt that Qing Yan seemed to have some misgivings. Like Luo Shang and Xiang Nan, I fused with Russia's consciousness and seized all of his strength, Qing Yan said calmly. Mu Yu's expression changed slightly. He recalled how Xiang Nan's temperament changed drastically when he fused with Hutu. If Qingyan fused with Rushu, wouldn't it mean that Qingyan would become like Xiang Nan? So you're no longer the Qingyan of the past? Mu Yu asked in a deep voice. He had returned home, but Qingyan had left? Qingyan shook his head. I'm different from Xiang Nan and Luo Shang. The two of them fused with Spirit Lord Yu Meng and also fused with their consciousness. However, I only fused with Spirit Lord Yu Meng's strength, not his consciousness. If he did not fuse with his consciousness, his nature would not be affected by Spirit Lord Yu Meng. Mu Yu asked in surprise, "How did you do it?" He also had Gomang in his body, so he knew what this meant. Gomang's consciousness could only be suppressed and could not be erased. To a certain extent, they were one. The fused consciousness would also overlap. This was why Xiang Nan was no longer the Xiang Nan of the past. It was because Xiang Nan's thoughts were mixed with Huda's thoughts. I found a way. I obtained a fusion method from the shadowless race and the shadowless race. This is also why I came to find you. Qingyan paused for a moment before continuing. I'll help you erase Gomang's consciousness and fuse with his strength to reach the Mahayana stage. Gomang, who was in Mu Yu's body, suddenly trembled and looked a little frightened. He did not expect Qingyan to say such a thing. If such a cultivation technique really existed, Qingyan would definitely be able to kill Gomang with his current strength. The fusion method of the shadowless race and the shadowless race? Mu Yu also sensed Gomang's fear in his body. He felt a little conflicted. Erasing Gomang's consciousness and devouring Gomang's strength seemed to be a matter of course. Chapter 1066. Qingyan said, "You should know that the Shadowy Man organization is the Shadowy Man race from another world, right? Their cultivation methods all rely on shadows. In fact, the body of the Shadowy Man race is a shadow, and the people of the Shadowy Man race are people who have lost their shadows." People who have lost their shadows? Mu Yu felt that this matter was really novel. He didn't expect that the Shadowy Man race and the Shadowy Man race had such a strange relationship. But then he remembered the battle with Shadow Killer Qing Ming and said, "But I remember that Shadow Killer Qing Ming was a person. At that time, I knocked down his shadow and revealed his body." In Qingshui City, Mu Yu killed Shadow Killer Qing Ming, who was at the spirit severing stage. At that time, he saw Qing Ming's true body. That's a person wrapped in shadows. Shadows can't move alone, so they will control a main body so that they can move freely. However, light is fatal to them, Qingyan explained. Mu Yu was very interested in the relationship between the Shadowy Man race and the Shadowy Man race because it was too strange to let the shadows separate. He had already seen how to use shadows to kill people. Last time, Master Lu told him that the Shadowy Man organization had always wanted to kill the Shadowy Man race. Why? Mu Yu asked. The Shadowy Man organization and the Shadowy Man organization seem to be enemies. How did their conflict come about? Xiao Shuai interrupted. I guess it's because the shadows want to turn over and become the master, right? More or less. They were originally one and came from the same race. They were all normal humans, but because they cultivated a powerful cultivation method, they separated from their shadows. As long as a normal human cultivates this cultivation method, it will cause the shadow to separate from their body. There is no way to stop it, and the shadow also has its own consciousness. At this time, there will be a war. If the main body has the upper hand, the main body will kill the conscious shadow and become a shadowy man. If the shadow has the upper hand, it will control the main body and become a shadowy man. The Shadowy Man race believes that the shadows are supreme, while the Shadowy Man race believes that the main body of the human is supreme. The two have different beliefs, so there is constant friction between them. The people of the Shadowless clan, whether it was by Yetian, Shang Guanlin, or Murong Yun, whom Mu Yu had seen before, none of them had shadows. They were normal cultivators who had cultivated a mysterious technique and killed their own shadows. Whether it was Shadowkill Ming-Qing or Shadowkill Huang-Quan, they were all shadows. They were shadows that had cultivated their own consciousness and controlled their own bodies, becoming another race. Qingyan's words made Mu Yu feel somewhat incredulous. There were all sorts of strange things in the Great Thousand Worlds. Even a shadow could become a spirit. It was indeed amazing. He glanced at his own shadow, and felt that it was a very happy thing that his shadow was obediently following him and didn't have to turn against him. Then how did these two races develop? How do they train their own people? Mu Yu asked. Is that important? Qingyan asked. I'm just curious. Mu Yu shrugged his shoulders. Qingyan thought for a moment and said, My current guess is that the two races should each find a talented cultivator and let the cultivator cultivate this technique. When the technique is completed, the shadow will have its own consciousness and will have its own cultivation. At this time, the people of the Shadowless clan will have their elders help to kill their own shadows and become people without shadows. When the people of the Shadowless clan reach the completion of this technique, they will let the shadow control the main body with the help of their elders, so that the shadow will take the initiative. It's that simple. Mu Yu suddenly understood. It sounded similar to the technique of the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death, but the people of the Gate of Hell and the Gate of Life and Death killed another twin who had cultivated since childhood and controlled the other's soul or body, while the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan killed the shadow and the main body respectively. Xiao Shuai asked curiously, Is this technique very powerful? It can actually make the shadow gain consciousness. Is the name of the Shadowless being enough of a deterrent? Qingyan asked rhetorically. The Shadowless being was the most mysterious organization in the cultivation world. It was very elusive and specialized in assassination. Anyone who was targeted by the Shadowless being would almost certainly die. This was because if the Shadowless being wanted to take on a mission, they would definitely send out people who could guarantee success. So far, except for Mu Yu and Qingyan who could kill the Shadowless being, no one else in the cultivation world had escaped from the Shadowless being. The missions of the Shadowless being were also divided into different levels. Many of the difficult missions were very expensive and ordinary people could not hire them at all. The name of the Shadowless being was enough to shock many people. If the shadow who cultivated the Shadowless being was so powerful, needless to say, the people of the Shadowless clan who also cultivated this powerful technique were very powerful. Relatively speaking, the people of the Shadowless clan were just relatively low-key. The cultivation world only knew about the fierce name of the Shadowless being, but not the existence of the Shadowless clan. Mu Yu asked, Then the fusion technique you mention refers to, this technique can separate the shadow and the body, which means that the shadow and the body can be fused. When the shadow and the body want to fuse, one of the consciousness must be erased, and this fusion technique can also be used on us. Qingyan said. So that's how it is. Then how did you get their fusion technique? Mu Yu couldn't help but admire Qingyan's ability. Such a powerful technique must belong to the absolute secret of the two clans. He didn't expect that Qingyan could even get the fusion technique of the two clans. Qingyan continued, Last time, the Shadowless being Winter Solstice was looking for my whereabouts. It should be a mission given to him by someone. So I killed the Shadowless being Winter Solstice on the way and sneaked into the Shadowless being organization with the identity of Shadowless being and obtained the secrets of the two clans. After a pause, Qingyan looked at Mu Yu with a smile. I also learned that the Soul Race wanted to control Yaman to destroy a few cities. Some of the people of the Gate of Hell also happened to meet you in Chun'an City. Mu Yu remembered what happened that night. Snow Eagle used the shadow technique to nail all the people of the Gate of Hell in the ruins. It turned out that it was Qingyan who did it. At that time, I wanted to come out to see you, but I found that you were already affected by the killing power. I knew that even if I came out, I wouldn't be able to persuade you to turn back. But I knew that you were going to the elixir sect, so I followed you. And then? Mu Yu asked. After I made an agreement with you, I went to the Shadowless clan and tried to get the fusion technique from them, but the Shadowless Being organization and the Shadowless clan both discovered my intentions. Mu Yu nodded slightly. So Shadow Killer Huang Quan came to kill you? When Shadow Killer Huang Quan was at the gate of hell, he wanted to force Mu Yu to tell him Qingyan's whereabouts, but he didn't succeed. At that time, he had always thought that Huang Quan was obviously from the gate of hell, so why did he suddenly become a shadow killer? It must be because the Shadowless Being clan let Elder Huang Quan of the Gate of Hell cultivate this technique, allowing the Shadow to take the initiative and become the spy of the Shadowless Being clan in the Gate of Hell. Qingyan said indifferently, I have already dealt with Huang Quan. He came to find me purely to court death. However, the fusion technique is a top secret for the two races. Originally, the shadow and the main body have different beliefs, so the fusion technique is equivalent to a disgrace, so it is impossible for this technique to be leaked. I think the two races want to kill me now. After all, I have violated their taboo. When Qingyan said this, he had always been calm. There were two powerful races chasing after him, but he wasn't afraid at all. Although Qingyan didn't say in detail how he sneaked into the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless Being organization, Qingyan must have experienced a lot of difficulties. Mu Yu always thought that the troubles he caused were already shocking, but he didn't expect that Qingyan's troubles were no less than his. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that the four of them were all troublemakers. Wherever Mu Yu went, there would be a lot of people looking for trouble with him. The Gate of Hell, Star Gate, and the Sanchong Palace couldn't wait to capture him. Xiang Nan directly controlled 100,000 self-cultivators, and Qingyan directly provoked the two mysterious races. It seemed that Luo Shang was the most obedient one among them. But Mu Yu didn't believe that Luo Shang, who was always in a rush, would be obedient. Last time, when Luo Shang was in Dongsha City, he sneaked into the Yuman's territory and found out that the Yuman was going to massacre the city, which caused Yuman to attack the city in advance. Not to mention, he even joined forces with Xiang Nan to raise the Red Dust sect to the ground. Mu Yu felt that he was quite innocent. He also wanted to be a good kid, but the problem was that he couldn't do it. Senior brother, how do you know about these things? The secrets of the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan? Since the fusion technique is their top secret, they shouldn't have leaked it casually, right? Mu Yu asked. Before Master went missing, he left a message at Mount Luochen. I learned about it from it. This was originally a method that he had been researching. After using the 9 Heavens Demon sealing formation to seal Spirit Lord Yu Meng in our bodies, he was worried that something would happen to Xiang Nan, so he thought about how to let the 5 of us get rid of Spirit Lord Yu Meng once and for all and become normal people. When he returned to Moyan Mountain, he thought of this method. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to tell us and only left a message. The last time I went back, I happened to find this message. Because no one had tried this method before, I was considered Master's first test subject, and also a very successful one. Qingyan's words touched Mu Yu's heart. It turned out that Master had always wanted them to be normal people. He painstakingly set up the 9 Heavens Demon sealing formation to help them suppress Spirit Lord Yu Meng, and even thought of this method to help them fuse with Spirit Lord Yu Meng in their bodies. It was a pity that Master, who always thought of them, was now in danger. These two clans used to come from other worlds, but now many of their clansmen are third heaven cultivators. In a way, they are like mixed-race clans. Now that the Soul clan wants to control the third heaven, and the Shadowless clan and the Shadowless clan want to stay out of it. They don't want to be enemies with the Soul clan, and they also don't want to interfere with the matters of the third heaven. So to me, one more enemy doesn't make a difference. If they want to cause trouble for me, they can come. As long as they stop me from saving my family, I will kill them. Qingyan said indifferently. In his heart, everyone in Mount Luochen was his family. As the eldest senior brother of Mount Luochen, he had to take on the responsibility of a senior brother. For his family, he could become enemies with the entire cultivation world. Mu Yu smiled slightly. This was also his intention. Back then, when Shangguan Lin of the Shadowless clan faced Mu Yu, he put on an expression as if he knew everything, and Mu Yu ruthlessly humiliated him. To Mu Yu, it didn't matter even if he killed Shangguan Lin. He had enough trouble, and 2 mixed-race clans didn't make a difference. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.